You're lying here because today felt like too much. Your mind won't turn off, and even though you know you should rest, part of you is still rehearsing conversations, replaying moments, wondering if you're doing enough or being enough. You're exhausted, not just tired, but carrying a kind of weariness that sleep alone hasn't been able to touch. Tonight, you'll discover that the teachings of Jesus weren't meant to add more weight to what you're already carrying. They were meant to lift it. We'll walk through some of the most transformative words Jesus ever spoke, but not in the way you might have heard them before. Not as assignments or expectations, as invitations, as permission, as rest. Even if you've heard these teachings 100 times and they've only ever felt like pressure, even if you're not sure you have the energy to believe anymore, even if part of you thinks transformation means more work, not less, tonight, these words will meet you differently. By the time we finish, your mind will have permission to stop trying so hard. You'll know that transformation doesn't require your constant effort tonight. You can let these truths do their quiet work while you simply rest. So, make yourself comfortable. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Notice the weight of your head sinking into the pillow, your body gradually releasing its grip on the day. Welcome to Sleepy Christian. Let your whole body settle where you are. Feel the surface beneath you supporting your weight. You don't have to hold yourself up anymore. Let your jaw unclench. Let your breathing find its own rhythm, slow and steady. You don't have to do anything right now except be here. If this time together helps you find rest, feel free to leave a quiet word in the comments about what you're carrying tonight. This is a place where you're not alone. Let us begin. Father, we come to you tonight not with grand words or perfect faith, but simply tired. Some of us are carrying burdens we were never meant to hold alone. Some of us have forgotten what rest even feels like. We ask that you would meet us here, not with demands, but with presence. Let these words about your Son be gentle with us tonight. Help us hear them not as tasks to complete, but as truth that holds us while we sleep. May we wake knowing we are yours, and that is enough. Amen. Our first story takes us to a moment when Jesus looked at a crowd of exhausted, striving people and said something that stopped them in their tracks. These weren't lazy people looking for an excuse to quit. These were farmers who'd been in the field since before dawn, fishermen whose hands were raw from nets, mothers who'd been up with sick children, tradesmen carrying the weight of quotas and debts. But they were carrying something heavier than their work. They were carrying the burden of religious expectation, the constant measuring of whether they were good enough, holy enough, devoted enough. They were tired in their bones, yes, but they were tired in their souls too. Picture the scene with me. The sun is beating down on a dusty road somewhere in Galilee, and the crowd has been following Jesus from town to town, listening to him teach in ways that feel different from the rabbis they've known. There's no condemnation in his voice, no finger pointing, no lists of rules they're failing to keep. Instead, there's something that sounds almost like kindness, and it's confusing them because they've been taught that God is primarily disappointed in them, that they need to try harder, be better, do more. Jesus sees them, really sees them. He sees the woman shifting her weight from foot to foot because her back hurts. He sees the man whose eyes keep closing even though he's standing up. He sees the young mother clutching her child, wondering if she remembered to pray the right prayers this morning. He sees the fisherman whose father told him he'd never amount to anything. He sees all of them, the weight they're carrying, the weariness they're trying to hide, the shame they've learned to wear like a second skin. And into that moment, Jesus speaks. His voice isn't loud, but it cuts through everything else. "Come to me," he says, "all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Come to me. Not try harder first. Not clean yourself up and then approach. Just come, all of you. Everyone who's tired. Everyone who's carrying too much. The invitation isn't conditional. It's not based on how well you've been doing. It's based on how tired you are. Your weariness is exactly what qualifies you. We can imagine the crowd leaning in, because this doesn't sound like any religious teaching they've ever heard. Rest? They've been taught that the path to God is narrow and difficult, that it requires constant vigilance, constant effort, constant proof of devotion. But Jesus is saying something different. He's saying their exhaustion isn't a moral failing. It's an invitation to come closer. "Take my yoke upon you," he continues, "and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Gentle. That word hangs in the air. When was the last time anyone described God as gentle with them? When was the last time they thought of religious teaching as something that brings rest instead of more anxiety? Jesus isn't just offering them a technique for stress management. He's offering them himself, his gentleness, his companionship, a yoke that's designed to fit, that doesn't chafe or wound. The image of a yoke would have been immediately familiar to everyone listening. In that agricultural society, they all knew what a yoke was, a wooden beam that connected two animals so they could pull a plow or a cart together. A good yoke, a well-made yoke, was carefully carved and sanded smooth. It was fitted to the individual animal, so the weight would be distributed properly, so there would be no rubbing, no injury. A bad yoke could wound, but a good yoke made the work bearable, even sustainable. And Jesus is saying his yoke is the good kind, the kind that fits, the kind that doesn't ask you to carry weight you were never designed to bear. "My yoke is easy," he says, "and my burden is light." For you, tonight, lying here in the dark, those words are still true. Come to me. Not come after you've figured everything out. Not come when you feel more spiritual or more put together. Come now. Come tired. Come burdened. Come exactly as you are, because your weariness is the only qualification the invitation requires. And here's what Jesus is not saying. He's not saying life won't be hard. He's not promising that following him means everything gets easier in the way we usually think of easy. What he's promising is rest for your soul. He's promising that the burden he asks you to carry is fundamentally different from the burden of trying to earn your way to God, trying to be good enough, trying to prove your worth. That burden is crushing. His burden is light because it's carried together, because he's gentle, because the yoke is designed to fit you. Tonight, whatever you're carrying that feels too heavy, the expectations you've placed on yourself, the disappointments you can't seem to shake, the fear that you're not measuring up, the exhaustion of trying to do everything right. What if that's not the yoke Jesus is offering? What if that crushing weight is something else entirely? Something you picked up along the way from voices that were never his? The yoke he offers doesn't wound. It doesn't leave you bleeding. It doesn't ask you to be someone you're not. It simply invites you to walk beside him, to learn from him, to let his gentleness redefine what following God actually means. We're not talking about lowering standards or giving up on growth. We're talking about discovering that transformation happens most deeply when we're resting in His love, not striving for His approval. As these words settle around you, let them do their quiet work. Feel your shoulders releasing, softening, as if something you've been holding up is now being held for you. Notice how your breath naturally slows when you're not fighting so hard. Let your whole body grow a little heavier against the surface beneath you, trusting that you don't have to hold yourself together. Right now, you're invited to rest. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. In another quiet moment from Jesus' life, we see Him take this idea of the yoke even further. The people listening to Him that day on the dusty road were curious about this metaphor, trying to understand what He meant. Because the truth is, the religious leaders of their time talked a lot about yokes too, but their yokes were anything but light. They piled rule upon rule, regulation upon regulation, creating burdens that no one could actually carry. And when people failed, which they inevitably did, there was shame and condemnation waiting for them. Jesus knew this. He'd grown up in this system. He'd watched people struggling under the weight of impossible expectations, trying to be good enough for a God who seemed perpetually disappointed. And now, standing before this crowd, He's offering something radically different. Think about the farming tool again, that wooden yoke connecting two oxen. In Jesus' time, a skilled carpenter would spend hours crafting a yoke, carefully measuring and shaping it so it would fit perfectly. The wood would be sanded until it was smooth as glass, every rough edge removed, because a poorly made yoke would injure the animal. It would rub and chafe, creating wounds that made the work unbearable. But a well-made yoke, fitted properly, actually made the work sustainable. It distributed the weight evenly. It allowed the animal to pull heavy loads without being damaged. When Jesus says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light," He's using a word that could also be translated as well-fitting or kindly. He's not saying the yoke doesn't exist or that there's no work involved in following Him. He's saying the yoke He offers is custom-made for you. It's been sanded smooth. It doesn't chafe. It doesn't wound. It doesn't ask you to be someone you're not or carry weight you were never designed to bear. And here's the part that often gets missed. In that farming image, the yoke connects two animals. Jesus isn't handing you a yoke and walking away, leaving you to pull the weight alone. He's in the yoke with you. The burden is shared. You're not striving in isolation. You're walking beside Him, learning His rhythm, discovering that His pace is gentler than you thought, His expectations less crushing. The religious leaders of Jesus' day had created a system where people were always failing, always falling short, always feeling like they weren't doing enough. The yoke they offered was heavy, precisely because it was designed to prove your inadequacy. But Jesus' yoke is light because it starts from a different premise entirely. You're already loved, you're already accepted, you're already His. The work isn't about earning those things. It's about learning to live from them. For you tonight, this matters because so much of what makes us tired isn't the actual circumstances of our lives. It's the weight of feeling like we're never enough. We carry the burden of comparison, of perfectionism, of trying to earn love and acceptance and worth through our performance. That's the yoke that wounds. That's the burden that crushes. What if, just for tonight, you could set that down? What if you could trade it for something different? Not a lesser version of yourself, but a truer one. A self that's held before it achieves, loved before it performs, accepted before it proves anything. Jesus says his burden is light, and we can trust that. Not because life becomes effortless, but because the fundamental burden shifts. Instead of carrying the impossible weight of earning God's love, we're simply learning to receive it. Instead of trying to become someone worthy of acceptance, we're discovering we're already known and chosen. Instead of white-knuckling our way to holiness, we're being transformed from the inside out by a gentleness that doesn't demand we have it all figured out. Think about the difference this makes. When you're carrying a burden that's too heavy, that doesn't fit right, you're constantly aware of it. It dominates your attention. You're always adjusting, always compensating, always in pain. But when the burden is well fitted, when it's shared, when it's light, you can actually look around. You can notice beauty. You can be present to your life instead of just enduring it. Tonight, whatever you're carrying that feels crushing, the fear of failure, the shame of past mistakes, the pressure to have it all together, the exhaustion of trying to be good enough, Jesus is saying that's not the yoke he's offering. That weight isn't coming from him. His yoke is easy. His burden is light, not because he's asking less of you, but because he's offering to carry it with you, because he's gentle, because the yoke is designed to fit who you actually are, not who you think you should be. We don't have to understand all of this perfectly right now. We don't have to figure out exactly how to exchange one burden for another. We just have to hear the invitation. Come. Bring your weariness. Bring your heaviness. Don't try to fix it first. Don't try to lighten it on your own. Just come. Learn from him. Discover what gentleness actually feels like. Find out that rest isn't something you earn. It's something you receive. Let your breathing slow even more now, like you're settling into something safe. Notice the spaces between your breaths, those quiet moments where nothing is asked of you. Feel your hands resting wherever they are, not needing to grip or hold or control. Let your whole body be a little heavier, trusting that the surface beneath you is solid, that you don't have to hold yourself up anymore. The yoke is easy. The burden is light. You can rest now. There's a scene in John's Gospel that shows us exactly what Jesus' gentleness looks like when it meets someone in their worst moment. It's early morning in the temple courtyard, and the dust is still cool on the stone floor. Jesus is teaching, and a crowd has gathered around him, listening carefully, when suddenly there's a commotion. Religious leaders, scribes and Pharisees, are dragging a woman forward, pushing through the crowd with self-righteous urgency. She's terrified, humiliated. She's been caught in adultery, they announce loudly, making sure everyone hears, making sure everyone knows her shame. Imagine the scene. The woman's hair is disheveled, her clothes hastily pulled on. She can't meet anyone's eyes. The shame is so thick it's hard to breathe. These men are holding stones, actual stones, in their hands. The law says she should be stoned to death for this sin, they remind Jesus. They're testing him, of course. It's a trap. If he says to stone her, he'll contradict his message of mercy and love. If he says not to stone her, he'll be going against the law of Moses. Either way, they think they have him. The crowd draws back, giving them space, and suddenly, the woman is standing there alone in the center of a circle. All eyes are on her. The religious leaders are holding their stones, waiting. The accusation hangs in the air like smoke. She's waiting for Jesus to join in the condemnation, to agree that she deserves punishment, to add his voice to the chorus of shame. But Jesus doesn't do what anyone expects. He kneels down. Right there in the dust, he kneels, lowering himself to the ground. and he starts writing in the dirt with his finger. We don't know what he wrote. Scripture doesn't tell us. Some people think he was writing the sins of the accusers, listing out their own failures. Others think he was simply giving the woman a moment where everyone wasn't staring at her, where she could breathe. Whatever he was writing, the gesture itself is profound. He's not standing over her in judgment. He's kneeling in the dust with her. The religious leaders keep pressing him. They want an answer. They want him to pick a side. Finally, Jesus stands up and says something that shifts everything. Let the one who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. Then he kneels back down and continues writing in the dirt. There's a long silence. You can almost hear it, the weight of his words settling over the crowd, over the religious leaders clutching their stones. One by one, starting with the oldest, they drop their stones and walk away. The sound of stones hitting the ground, thud after thud, until the courtyard is quiet again and the woman is standing there alone with Jesus. He looks up at her, not with disgust, not with disappointment, just looks at her, sees her. Woman, he says, where are they? Has no one condemned you? She glances around, almost not believing it. No one, sir, she whispers, and Jesus says, neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, you're fine. Nothing to see here. You didn't do anything wrong. He doesn't minimize the sin, but he also doesn't condemn. He doesn't shame. He doesn't pile guilt on top of her already crushing humiliation. Instead, he offers her something no one else in that courtyard was willing to give, a future. Go, he says, not stay here in your shame, not carry this forever. Go, move forward. You're not defined by this moment. For you tonight, if there's something in your past that still makes you feel like that woman in the courtyard, exposed, ashamed, certain you deserve the stones, hear this. Jesus is not holding a stone. He never was. He's kneeling in the dust with you. The accusers may have voices in your head, listing your failures, reminding you of everything you've done wrong. But Jesus' voice is different. Neither do I condemn you. This is what gentleness looks like in real time. It's not pretending wrong things are right. It's not saying sin doesn't matter. It's refusing to let shame be the final word. It's giving dignity to someone who's been stripped of it. It's creating space for transformation to happen, not through condemnation, but through love. We live in a world, and sometimes in a church culture, that's very good at holding stones. We know how to point out failure. We know how to maintain our own sense of righteousness by identifying someone else's sin. We know how to shame and exclude and condemn. But Jesus models something radically different. He enters into the mess. He kneels in the dust. He sees the person behind the sin and offers them not punishment, but possibility. And here's what's crucial. Transformation actually happens in that kind of environment. When the woman hears, "Neither do I condemn you," something shifts inside her. She's not let off the hook. Leave your life of sin is a real instruction, but she's given the freedom and the safety and the dignity to actually do that. Shame makes us hide. Shame makes us defensive. Shame keeps us stuck in the same patterns because we're so busy protecting ourselves from the stones. But when condemnation is removed, when someone sees us at our worst and still treats us with kindness, that's when real change becomes possible. Tonight, you don't have to be perfect to be here. You don't have to have cleaned up your life before you can approach Jesus. You can come with your failures, your regrets, your shame, your sense that you don't deserve mercy. You can come exactly as you are. And what you'll find is not someone holding a stone, waiting to punish you. You'll find someone who kneels in the dust, who refuses to condemn, who offers you a future that isn't defined by your past. Feel your hands unclenching now, your fingers softening, as if you're releasing stones you didn't even realize you were holding. Let your breath move in and out naturally, each exhale a small letting go. Notice how your body relaxes just a little more when you're not bracing for punishment, when you remember that gentleness is real, that condemnation isn't the last word. You're safe here. You can rest. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus looked at the crowd gathered on that Galilean hillside and told them something that must have sounded almost absurd. These weren't the wealthy or the powerful or the religious elite. These were ordinary people, marginalized people, people who'd been told their whole lives that they didn't matter much, fishermen who smelled like the sea, farmers with dirt permanently under their fingernails, women who weren't allowed to study Torah, tax collectors who'd been labeled traitors, people who'd been rejected by polite society, who'd learned to keep their heads down, who didn't expect much beyond survival. The sun is warm on that hillside, and there's a gentle breeze coming off the Sea of Galilee. People are sitting on the grass, some standing at the edges of the crowd. Children are playing nearby, their mothers keeping half an eye on them while straining to hear what this rabbi is saying. There's an expectancy in the air because everyone's heard that Jesus teaches differently, that he says things that turn the world upside down. And then he says it. You are the salt of the earth. Not, you could be. Not, you should try to become. You are. Present tense. Already true. Right now. These people who've been dismissed, overlooked, told they don't have much to offer. He looks at them and declares that they are salt, essential, valuable, the thing that brings out flavor, that preserves, that makes food worth eating. Think about what salt meant in that culture. It wasn't just a seasoning, it was a necessity. Before refrigeration, salt was what kept food from spoiling. It was used in covenants and sacrifices. It was valuable enough to be used as currency. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt. That's where we get the word salary. To say someone wasn't worth their salt was a serious insult. Salt mattered. Salt was precious. And Jesus looks at these ordinary, overlooked people and says, "That's you. You are salt. Your presence matters. Your existence has value. You bring something essential to the world just by being who you are." We can imagine the crowd shifting, murmuring to each other. Is he really talking to us? Is he really saying we matter? They've been taught to think of themselves as spiritually inferior, as people who don't have much to offer God. The religious leaders have all the knowledge, all the status, all the worthiness. But here's Jesus, God made flesh, saying the opposite. You're salt. You're essential. You're valuable exactly as you are. For you tonight, lying here in the dark, maybe feeling small or invisible or like you don't have much to contribute, hear this. You are salt. Not because you've achieved something remarkable, not because you've earned it through good behavior or perfect faith. You're salt because that's who you are. Your presence in the world brings flavor. Your kindness, even when you think no one notices, matters. Your faithfulness in small things, your quiet perseverance, your simple act of showing up, that's salt. That's preservation. That's what keeps the world from going completely bland or completely rotten. Jesus isn't asking you to become salt. He's telling you what you already are. And that's radically different from how we usually think about spiritual growth. We're so used to feeling like we have to become something we're not. like we have to transform ourselves into someone more worthy, more useful, more significant. But Jesus starts from a completely different place. You already matter. You already have value. You already bring something essential. This isn't about ego or pride. It's about identity. It's about knowing that you don't have to prove your worth. You have worth simply because you exist, because God made you, because He says, "You're salt." The world might not notice you. You might feel small in the grand scheme of things. But Jesus is saying, your presence is essential. Without salt, food is bland. Without you, something would be missing. And here's what's beautiful about this metaphor. Salt doesn't have to announce itself. It doesn't have to make a big show. It just is. It does its work quietly, pervasively, essentially. You don't need a spotlight to be valuable. You don't need to be famous or important in the world's eyes. You're salt. And salt changes everything it touches, often without being noticed. Tonight, if you've been feeling like you're not enough, like you don't have enough to offer, like you're failing at being the person you're supposed to be, pause for a moment and let this truth settle. You are the salt of the earth. Jesus isn't saying that to the person you might become someday. He's saying it to you, right now, exactly as you are. Your struggles don't disqualify you. Your doubts don't disqualify you. Your ordinariness doesn't disqualify you. You are salt. You always have been. Let your breathing deepen as this sinks in, your body responding to a truth that your mind is just beginning to grasp. Feel your chest rising and falling, steady and sure, like the rhythm of waves on a shore. Notice how your body knows how to rest, how to simply be, without needing to prove anything. You are salt. You can let that be enough for tonight. Jesus isn't finished with his declarations of identity on that hillside. He's just getting started, and what he says next builds on what he's already told them. The crowd is still processing this idea that they're salt, essential, valuable, significant, when Jesus adds another layer. He looks at them, these ordinary people sitting in the grass with the sun beginning to lower in the western sky, casting long shadows across the hillside, and he says something even more remarkable. You are the light of the world. Light. Not salt anymore, but light itself, the thing that pushes back darkness, the thing that makes sight possible, the thing that guides and reveals and illuminates. And once again, it's present tense. You are. Not try to be or work toward being. You are light, right now, already. Jesus gestures toward the horizon where they can see the city of Tiberias, or maybe Safed, one of those ancient cities built on a hill, its buildings catching the last rays of sunlight, beginning to glow with the oil lamps being lit inside homes as evening approaches. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, he says. The image is clear, vivid, impossible to miss. When darkness falls, those lights will be visible for miles. They don't have to try to be seen. They just shine, and the darkness makes them more visible, not less. Think about what this means. A city on a hill doesn't hide. It can't hide. Its very position makes it a beacon. And Jesus is saying, that's you. You're not meant to diminish yourself, to make yourself small, to hide your light under a basket. Your light, who you are, the presence of God in you, the kindness you show, the truth you carry, that's meant to shine. But here's what's crucial. He's not saying you have to work up this light on your own. He's not giving them another task to complete, another standard to meet. He's declaring an identity. You are light because Christ is in you. You are light because you reflect something beyond yourself. The light isn't your achievement. it's your nature as someone who belongs to God. The crowd on that hillside would have understood light in a way we sometimes don't, living as we do in a world where darkness can be banished with the flip of a switch. For them, darkness was profound, absolute, sometimes dangerous. A lamp in the night wasn't just convenient, it was essential. It meant safety, warmth, the ability to continue living even after the sun went down. Light was precious. Light was a gift. Light was life. And Jesus says, you are that. You carry that, not because you're perfect, not because you have it all figured out, but because God's presence in you is light, and light cannot help but shine. For you tonight, this identity matters because we spend so much energy trying to hide. We hide our struggles, thinking no one else would understand. We hide our doubts, afraid they make us bad Christians. We hide our failures, certain they prove we're not really who we're supposed to be. We make ourselves small, dim our light, convinced that we're not ready to shine yet, not good enough to be visible. But Jesus is saying the opposite. You're a city on a hill. You can't be hidden, and you're not supposed to be hidden. Your light, your authenticity, your kindness, your faith, even when it's struggling, your simple presence, that light matters. That light is needed. The world is dark enough without you trying to extinguish your own flame. Let your light shine before others, Jesus says, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, so that people will be impressed with you, or so that you'll get credit. The light isn't about you building a reputation. It's about God being glorified. It's about your small acts of kindness, your quiet faithfulness, your consistent showing up. All of that pointing beyond yourself to something larger, something true, something that holds the world together. You don't have to manufacture this light. You don't have to fake brightness when you feel dim inside. The light is Christ in you, and even when you can barely sense it, it's still there. Even your smallest act of love is light. Even your quiet faithfulness when no one's watching is light. Even your decision to keep going when everything in you wants to quit, that's light too. Think about a single candle in a dark room. It doesn't take much light to push back a lot of darkness. You don't have to be a spotlight. You don't have to illuminate everything. You just have to be what you already are, light. And light, by its very nature, shines. It can't help it. It doesn't have to try. It just does what it was made to do. Tonight, lying here, you might not feel particularly bright. You might feel more like a flickering flame than a city on a hill. But Jesus isn't talking about how you feel. He's talking about what you are. You are light, even when you doubt it, even when you can't see it yourself, even when your faith feels small and your impact feels insignificant. You are light, and a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Let this truth wash over you now like a gentle wave. Feel your whole body softening, releasing, as if something tight inside you is finally loosening its grip. You don't have to prove you're light. You don't have to earn the right to shine. You already are what Jesus says you are. Rest in that. Let your breathing slow, your body growing heavier against whatever is holding you, trusting that you are seen, you are known, you are light, even in the darkness, especially in the darkness. Later in that same teaching on the hillside, Jesus turns his listeners' attention away from themselves for a moment and directs them to look at the world around them, to the birds circling overhead, to the wildflowers dotting the slope in patches of purple and white and gold. It's a shift in the sermon, a moment where Jesus invites them to simply observe, to notice what's already there, what's been there all along, but perhaps they've been too busy, too worried to really see. Picture this moment with us. The hillside is covered with grass that's turning golden in the late afternoon light. Scattered across the slope are wildflowers, anemones maybe, or cyclamen, small but stunning, their petals catching the sun. Above them, birds are circling and diving, sparrows and swallows chasing insects in the warm air. Some land nearby, pecking at seeds in the grass, completely unaware that they're about to become part of a teaching that will echo through centuries. Jesus watches these birds for a moment, and maybe he smiles. There's something about the way he teaches that feels less like a lecture and more like an invitation to notice things, to pay attention to what God is already doing all around us. Look at the birds of the air, he says, gesturing upward. They don't sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. The crowd follows his gaze. They know these birds well. Sparrows are everywhere, common as dirt, worth almost nothing in the market. 2 sparrows sold for a penny, the cheapest thing you could buy. And yet, Jesus points out, God feeds them. They don't plant crops. They don't have barns or storage facilities. They don't lie awake at night worrying about where their next meal will come from. They simply live. And somehow, day after day, they find what they need. Are you not much more valuable than they? Jesus asks. It's not really a question that needs an answer. Of course they're more valuable. Of course God cares for humans more than he cares for sparrows. But sometimes we forget that, don't we? Sometimes we live as if we're on our own, as if our survival depends entirely on our ability to plan and control and worry our way to security. Then Jesus shifts to the flowers. See how the flowers of the field grow, he says. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. Think about that for a moment. Solomon, the wealthiest, most powerful king Israel had ever known. His palace was legendary, his robes magnificent, woven with gold thread and purple dye that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. And Jesus says these wildflowers, these common flowers that no human hand planted or cultivated, are more beautiful than Solomon in all his glory. The flowers don't work. They don't spin thread or weave cloth. They don't try to make themselves beautiful. They simply grow, and in growing, they become exactly what they were meant to be. And that's enough, more than enough. They're glorious, not because they tried, but because they surrendered to what they were created to be. Notice your breathing here, how it might naturally slow as you imagine that hillside, those flowers, that invitation to simply be. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, Jesus continues, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? There's gentleness in that phrase, you of little faith. He's not angry, he's not disappointed, he understands. He knows how hard it is to trust, how natural it is to worry, but he's inviting them, inviting us, to consider a different way of living. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, he says, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. For you tonight, these words land differently than they might in the middle of the day when you're trying to solve problems and plan ahead and control outcomes. Right now, lying here in the dark, you're not in a position to fix anything anyway. You can't solve tomorrow's problems tonight. You can't make the uncertain certain. You can't guarantee outcomes, no matter how much you rehearse conversations or replay scenarios in your mind. What if, just for these hours, you could trust that the God who doesn't forget sparrows won't forget you. The God who clothes wildflowers in glory, flowers that live for a season and then fade, surely He'll provide for you. You are worth more than many sparrows. You're worth more than a hillside full of flowers, not because you've earned that worth, but simply because you're His. We often think of provision in purely material terms, having enough money, enough food, enough security. And yes, Jesus is talking about those things, but He's also talking about something deeper. He's talking about the fundamental trust that we're held, that we're cared for, that we don't have to white-knuckle our way through life as if everything depends on our constant vigilance. The birds don't know where their next meal is coming from, but they wake up singing anyway. The flowers don't know if it will rain, but they bloom anyway. There's a kind of surrender in that, a kind of trust that's built into creation itself. And Jesus is inviting us into that same trust, that same surrender to the Father who sees, who knows, who provides. This doesn't mean we never plan or save or work. The birds spend their days looking for food. They're not passive, but they're not anxious. They don't hoard. They don't lie awake worrying. They simply do what they were made to do, and they trust that it will be enough. Tonight, all the things you're worried about, the bills, the relationships, the uncertain future, the things that need fixing, the problems that feel too big. What if, just for now, you could let them be? Not because they don't matter, but because your worry isn't actually helping solve them. Your anxiety tonight won't change tomorrow's outcomes. It will only steal the rest you need. You are more valuable than birds. You are more precious than flowers. And the God who sustains all of creation, who feeds every sparrow and clothes every wildflower in glory, is sustaining you too, even when you can't see it, even when it doesn't feel like enough. He hasn't forgotten you. He won't forget you. Let your body sink deeper now into whatever is holding you, like those flowers rooted in the hillside, drawing what they need from soil they cannot see. Feel the weight of your body becoming heavier, more settled, as if you're finally allowing yourself to be held instead of holding yourself up. Your breath slows naturally, effortlessly, like a bird gliding on a thermal current, trusting the air to hold it aloft. Jesus knows that our worry often comes from seeking the wrong things first, from trying to build security in places that can't actually hold it. The crowd on that hillside is still thinking about birds and flowers, about provision and care, when He brings His teaching to a central point. This is the heart of it, the thing that makes sense of everything else He's been saying. The people lean in because this is the question everyone's asking, the question that drives so much of our striving and anxiety. What should we prioritize? What really matters? Where should we put our energy and attention? The sun is lower now, the shadows longer across the grass. Some people in the crowd have been following Jesus all day, and they're tired, but they don't want to leave. There's something about the way He speaks that makes them feel like they're hearing things they've always needed to hear, but never knew how to articulate. He's been talking about worry, about provision, about how God cares for sparrows and flowers. Now, He's going to tell them what to do with all of that. Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, Jesus says, and all these things will be given to you as well. Seek first. That's the order that matters. Not seek only. He's not saying ignore practical concerns, or stop working, or pretend you don't have needs. He's saying there's an order to things, a priority that changes everything else. When we seek God's kingdom first, when we orient our lives around His reality instead of around our fear, something shifts. The other things, the food, the clothing, the practical needs that were making us anxious, they don't disappear, but they find their proper place. They become things God provides rather than things we have to desperately scramble to secure on our own. Think about what kingdom meant to these listeners. They lived under Roman occupation. They knew what kingdoms were, systems of power and control, where some people had everything and others had nothing, where security came from being on the right side of those in charge. But Jesus talks about a different kind of kingdom, one where the values are inverted, where the last are first, and the meek inherit the earth, where provision comes not from climbing power structures, but from trusting a Father who sees and cares. To seek first God's kingdom means to orient your life around a different set of values, a different understanding of what matters. It means asking, "What would love do?" before asking, "What would keep me safe?" It means choosing trust over control, generosity over hoarding, relationship over isolation. It means believing that you're held by something more solid than your bank account or your job security or your carefully constructed plans. Let yourself breathe here, just noticing the rhythm of your breath without trying to change it. And that phrase, His righteousness, it's not a threat. It's not about being perfect or measuring up or earning approval. In the context of everything Jesus has been teaching, righteousness here means being in right relationship with God, living in alignment with His heart, His character, His way of being in the world. It's less about rule following and more about becoming the kind of person who naturally does loving, generous, truthful things, because that's who you're becoming from the inside out. All these things will be given to you as well. All these things, the food, the clothes, the provision, the security you were worrying about, they'll be added to you. Not because you earned them or because you figured out the perfect strategy, but because seeking first the kingdom reorients your whole life. When you're living from trust instead of fear, when you're prioritizing relationship with God over everything else, the other things find their place. They come not as the fruit of your anxiety, but as the fruit of your trust. For you tonight, seeking first doesn't mean doing more. It doesn't mean adding another item to your already overwhelming to-do list. It means turning toward God before you. Turn toward your worry. It means one quiet breath of "I need you" before you start rehearsing all your concerns again. It means this moment right now, lying here, letting yourself be held, choosing rest over rumination. That's seeking. That's enough for tonight. We make this so complicated, don't we? We think seeking God's kingdom means heroic spiritual effort, perfect devotion, getting everything right. But sometimes, seeking first just means remembering in this moment that you're not alone. It means letting yourself be loved before you try to perform. It means trusting that you're held even when everything feels uncertain. The beautiful thing about this teaching is that it's not transactional. Jesus isn't saying, if you seek the kingdom, then God will provide. So you'd better seek hard enough, or you'll be on your own. He's saying that seeking first the kingdom is actually what allows you to see the provision that was already there. When you're frantically trying to control outcomes, you can't see the birds being fed or the flowers being clothed. But when you reorient toward trust, toward the kingdom, suddenly you notice what God was doing all along. Tonight, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know exactly how to seek first in every area of your life. You just have to know that this matters more than your worry does. This relationship with God, this trust that he sees and knows and cares. That's the foundation. Everything else builds from there. Think about building a house. You can spend all your energy on the decorations and the furniture and the paint colors, but if the foundation isn't solid, none of that matters. Seeking first God's kingdom is about getting the foundation right. And when the foundation is solid, everything else has a place to stand. As this settles into your awareness, feel the spaces between your breaths becoming longer, quieter, like pauses in a conversation where nothing needs to be said. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears, your jaw softening, your whole face relaxing into the darkness. You don't have to seek perfectly. You just have to turn toward what's true, toward what holds, toward the kingdom that was here before your worry and will be here after. Rest in that priority. Let everything else be secondary for now. Jesus once told a story about a man who thought he'd finally figured out how to be secure, how to guarantee his future, how to never have to worry again. It's a story that cuts right to the heart of where we place our trust, what we think will actually save us. This wasn't a parable about an evil man or someone doing something obviously wrong. It was about someone who seemed to be doing exactly what everyone says you're supposed to do. Plan ahead, work hard, build wealth, secure your future. Picture this man with us. He's a farmer, and he's had an extraordinarily good year. His fields have produced beyond anything he imagined. Grain overflowing, more than his barns can hold. This is the dream, right? This is success. He stands there looking at his abundance, and instead of worry about scarcity, he has a different kind of problem. Too much. His barns literally cannot contain the blessing, so he starts planning. You can almost hear his internal monologue, the way we all think when we're trying to figure out how to secure ourselves. What shall I do? He asks himself. I have no place to store my crops. And then the solution comes to him. This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. There's something almost sympathetic about this man, isn't there? He's not scheming to hurt anyone. He's not hoarding at someone else's expense, at least not explicitly. He's just planning. He's doing what feels prudent, responsible, wise. He's thinking long-term. He's building security. Who wouldn't want to be in a position where you could say to yourself, I have enough for many years. I can finally relax. But then God speaks, and what God says is startling in its directness. You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Notice God doesn't say the man was wrong to have grain or to store it. He doesn't condemn wealth itself. What he calls foolish is the man's assumption that security could be found in accumulation, that life could be guaranteed through planning, that bigger barns meant a secure future. The man thought he'd finally arrived at safety, but he'd actually built his security on something that couldn't hold it. Take a slow breath here, letting your chest rise and fall gently, noticing how breath comes whether we plan for it or not. This very night changes everything. All the planning, all the building, all the stored up surplus. None of it can prevent or delay what's coming. The man's life will be demanded, and the Greek word there suggests it's like a loan being called in. Your life isn't really yours to hoard or control. It's a gift, and one day the giver will ask for it back. And on that day, your barns won't matter. Your security won't matter. The only thing that will matter is whether you were rich toward God. Jesus ends the story with that phrase, This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. Being rich toward God, that's the contrast. That's what the farmer wasn't doing. He was storing up for himself, building security for himself, talking to himself, congratulating himself. It was all self-focused, self-secured, self-contained. God wasn't part of the equation except as a means to more stuff. For you tonight, this story isn't meant to make you feel guilty about having savings or planning for the future. Jesus isn't saying those things are wrong. He's saying they can't be your ultimate security. He's saying that whatever you're trying to accumulate, money, yes, but also approval, control, certainty, success, even spiritual achievements, none of that can give you the security you're actually craving. We do this in so many ways, don't we? We think, if I just had enough money saved, I could relax. If I could just control these relationships, I'd feel safe. If I could just get my life organized enough, I'd finally have peace. We're building bigger barns in our hearts, places to store up the things we think will make us secure. But the security they offer is an illusion. It vanishes the moment we're faced with something we can't control, can't predict, can't prepare for. Being rich toward God means something entirely different. It means recognizing that your security doesn't come from what you've accumulated, but from whose you are. It means investing in relationship with God, in trust, in generosity, in the kind of richness that doesn't evaporate when circumstances change. It means knowing that you're held whether your barns are full or empty, whether your plans work out or fall apart. The farmer in the story made his soul a function of his surplus. Soul, he said to himself, you have plenty stored up. But souls aren't fed by grain. They're not secured by barns. They're nourished by trust, by love, by connection with the one who gave them life in the first place. Tonight, lying here, you can't build any barns. You can't secure anything. You're not in control of outcomes. And maybe that feels frightening. Or maybe, just maybe, it's a relief. Because if security doesn't come from what you accumulate or control, then you can stop trying so hard to guarantee a future that was never yours to guarantee anyway. You can rest in being rich toward God instead, which tonight might simply mean acknowledging that you need Him, that you can't do this alone, that you're trusting Him with what you cannot control. Being rich toward God doesn't require perfect faith or complete understanding. It just requires turning toward Him instead of toward your barns. It requires admitting that the things you're storing up, emotionally, spiritually, materially, can't actually save you. Only He can. Only love can. Only trust can. Let your hands rest open now, palms up if that feels comfortable, practicing the physical posture of not gripping so tightly. Feel your body growing heavier, more settled, as if the need to hold everything together is finally releasing its grip on you. You don't have to be rich in accumulation tonight. You can just be held, just be loved, just be rich in trust that someone bigger than you is holding what you cannot. Jesus wants us to understand something fundamental about who God actually is, about how He relates to us, about what kind of relationship He's inviting us into. The disciples have been watching Jesus pray, and there's something different about it. When the religious leaders pray, it's formal, public, full of impressive-sounding words designed to demonstrate their piety. When Jesus prays, it sounds like He's talking to someone real, someone present, someone who's actually listening and responding. So the disciples ask Him to teach them to pray, and His answer changes everything. Picture the scene. Maybe they're sitting around a fire after a long day, or gathered in someone's home, or out in a quiet place away from the crowds. The disciples have been with Jesus long enough now to see patterns in his life, how he slips away at dawn to pray, how he talks to God like someone talking to someone they know intimately. They want that. They want to know how to approach God the way Jesus does. When you pray, Jesus begins, say, "Our Father in heaven." Father, not the Almighty Judge, not the distant King, not the one who watches to see if you mess up. Father, and not just any Father. The Aramaic word Jesus would have used was Abba, which is intimate, familial, the word a child would use. It's not quite daddy, but it's closer to that than to the formal father we might imagine. This would have been shocking to his listeners. You didn't call God Father in that intimate way. God was holy, separate, transcendent, dangerous even. You approached him with fear and trembling, with sacrifices and rituals, with intermediaries who could stand in the gap because you certainly couldn't. But Jesus says no. When you pray, start by calling him Father. Start by remembering that you're a beloved child, not a subject awaiting judgment. Think about what this means for how we understand prayer. Prayer isn't about performing well enough to get God's attention. It's not about using the right words or the right formula. It's about a child talking to a father who's already leaning in, already listening, already glad you're there. You don't have to impress him. You don't have to clean yourself up first. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just come the way a child comes to a parent, sometimes with words, sometimes with tears, sometimes with just a need to be close. Breathe here, slowly, letting your body remember what it feels like to be held without having to perform. The religious leaders of Jesus' day had made prayer into something complicated and burdensome. Long recitations, specific postures, elaborate formulas. If you didn't do it right, you weren't really praying. But Jesus simplifies everything. He brings it back to relationship. Our Father. That's where prayer begins. Not with your eloquence or your worthiness, but with his heart toward you. For you tonight, if your relationship with God has felt formal, or fearful, or transactional, like you have to say the right things or feel the right feelings or demonstrate enough faith before you can approach, hear this. You're invited to call him Father, not because you've earned that intimacy, but because that's who he is. That's how he wants to relate to you. We've all had different experiences with earthly fathers, and sometimes those experiences make it hard to hear Father as good news. Some fathers were distant or demanding. Some were absent entirely. Some were harsh or critical or impossible to please. And if that's your story, it's okay to acknowledge that Father might not immediately feel safe or comforting. But Jesus is giving us a new definition, a truer definition. He's showing us what Father really means, not based on our earthly experiences, but based on God's actual heart. A Father who runs to meet you when you're still far off. A Father who celebrates your return, even when you've squandered everything. A Father who sees you and knows you and loves you not because of what you do, but because of who you are, his child. This is the foundation of everything else Jesus teaches about prayer. Before you ask for anything, before you confess anything, before you do anything, remember whose child you are. Remember that you're coming to a Father who wants to hear from you, who's not keeping score, who's not waiting for you to fail. Prayer isn't about convincing God to care about you. He already cares. Prayer is about opening yourself to receive what he's already offering. Tonight, You don't have to have perfect words. You don't have to pray eloquently or say everything right. You can come to God as Father with your tiredness, your confusion, your questions, your doubts. You can come as a child comes, honestly, simply, trustingly, even if that trust is shaky, even if you're not sure you believe it yet. The invitation stands, our Father, not our judge or our taskmaster, Father. And notice, it's our Father, not my Father. We pray in community even when we're alone. We're part of a family, connected to every other person who calls God Father, held together in something bigger than our individual struggles. You're not approaching God in isolation. You're part of a great company of people who are also learning to trust, also discovering what it means to be children of this Father. As you let this truth settle around you, feel your body relaxing into it like a child finally feeling safe enough to rest. Notice your breath deepening, your muscles softening, your whole being responding to the simple gift of being loved as a child is loved. You don't have to grow up perfectly or be impressive or get everything right. You're His child. You can come home. You can rest here. Let your breathing be your prayer, wordless, simple, the breath of a child who knows they're held. Jesus doubles down on this picture of God as Father by telling us exactly how that Father responds when we come to Him with our needs, our requests, our honest prayers. The disciples are still gathered around Him, still learning what it means to call God Father when He gives them this teaching that pulls back the curtain on God's heart in a way that's almost too good to believe. Ask and it will be given to you, Jesus says. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. The structure of these commands is urgent, active, present tense. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. This isn't about one perfect prayer that either works or doesn't. It's about an ongoing relationship where you bring your needs and your heart to a Father who's listening, who's responsive, who's engaged. Then Jesus does something brilliant. He doesn't give them abstract theology about prayer. He uses a metaphor they'll all understand immediately. Which of you, He asks, if your son asks for bread, we'll give him a stone, or if he asks for a fish, we'll give him a snake. Picture a father in that culture, sitting with his family at mealtime. His young son is hungry and asks for bread, the most basic provision, the staple that sustains life. Would that father look at his son's hungry face and hand him a stone instead? A stone that looks like a small loaf, but would break the child's teeth if he tried to eat it? Of course not. The very idea is absurd, almost offensive. What kind of father would do that? Or imagine the son asking for fish, common food in Galilee, something they ate regularly. Would a father respond by handing his son a snake? Something that looks vaguely similar in shape but is dangerous, potentially deadly? No father would do that. No father who loved his child would substitute something harmful for something nourishing. Let your shoulders drop a little as you absorb this image, the simplicity of a child asking and a father providing. Jesus lets that image sit for a moment, and then He delivers the punchline. If you, then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask Him? Notice that phrase, though you are evil. Jesus isn't being harsh here. He's being realistic. Even flawed, imperfect, sinful human fathers know how to give good things to their children. Even fathers who make mistakes, who get things wrong, who fail in various ways, they still know the difference between bread and stones, between fish and snakes. They still want good things for their kids. they still respond to their children's needs with provision, not punishment. So if that's true of imperfect human fathers, how much more is it true of your perfect Heavenly Father? If broken people know how to love their children well, how much better does God love you? If earthly fathers who struggle with selfishness and impatience and their own wounds still manage to provide for their kids, how much more will your Father in heaven provide for you? This is the heart of it. God isn't waiting for you to ask perfectly before He'll respond. He's not withholding good things until you prove you deserve them. He's not playing games, pretending to offer bread while secretly planning to give you stones. He's a Father who gives good gifts, not because you're perfect, not because you always ask for the right things, but because He's good, because that's who He is. For you tonight, this means your prayers don't have to be eloquent or theologically precise. You don't have to know exactly what to ask for or how to phrase it. You can come to God the way a child comes to a parent, with simple needs, honest feelings, maybe not even sure what you're asking for, just knowing you need help. I'm tired. That's a prayer. I'm scared. That's a prayer. I need you. That's a prayer. And God responds not with stones or snakes, not with rejection or punishment or disappointment, but with good gifts. Sometimes the gifts look different than what we asked for. Sometimes what we think is bread turns out to be something we don't actually need, and God in His wisdom gives us what will truly nourish instead. But He never gives stones pretending they're bread. He never tricks us or harms us, or withholds what we actually need. We often hesitate to pray because we're afraid we're asking for too much, bothering God with things that are too small or too selfish. But Jesus is saying the opposite. Ask. Keep asking. Bring your actual needs, your real requests, your honest heart. Your Father isn't annoyed by your asking. He's not rationing His love, parceling out just enough to keep you limping along. He gives good gifts, generous gifts, the kind of gifts a father gives a beloved child. Think about the best parenting you've ever witnessed or experienced, the way a good parent delights in giving their child what they need, the way they want their child to thrive and be well, and know they're loved. That's a shadow, a pale reflection of how God feels about you. Even the best earthly father is evil compared to God's pure goodness, and yet they know how to love their kids. How much more does your Heavenly Father know how to love you? Tonight, you don't have to have it all figured out before you can pray. You don't have to ask for the right things or be sure your motives are pure or demonstrate sufficient faith. You can just ask, just seek, just knock. And the Father on the other side of that door isn't waiting to catch you in a mistake. He's waiting to give you good gifts, to open the door, to welcome you in. Let your body respond to this truth now, your breath becoming deeper and slower, like you're finally allowing yourself to exhale fully. Feel your hands unclenching, your jaw loosening, your whole being releasing the tension of trying to be good enough to deserve love. You're already loved. The gifts are already good. The Father is already giving. Rest your weight fully now into the surface beneath you, trusting it to hold you the way your Father holds you, completely, generously, gladly, without keeping score. Jesus has a sense of humor, and He uses it to make a point about how we treat each other and ourselves. We're still in the Sermon on the Mount, still on that hillside in Galilee, and Jesus has been teaching about prayer, about God as Father, about how to relate to the divine. Now He shifts to something equally important, how we relate to one another, and particularly how we see our own faults compared to the faults of others. He paints a picture that's so absurd, it would be funny if it weren't so painfully familiar. "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye?" he asks, "and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?" Picture this with us. Imagine someone walking around with a massive wooden beam, a plank, the kind of timber you'd use to build a house, sticking out of their eye. It's enormous, obvious, impossible to miss. And yet this person is squinting at their friend, leaning in close, trying to remove a tiny speck of sawdust from their friend's eye. "Hold still," they're saying. "I can see this little speck in your eye. Let me get it out for you." Meanwhile, they're poking their friend with the massive plank protruding from their own face, completely oblivious to it. It's ridiculous. That's the point. Jesus is using exaggeration to make something absurd that we do all the time, without even realizing it. We're incredibly perceptive about other people's failures. We can spot their mistakes, their character flaws, their sins from a mile away. We notice when they're impatient or judgmental or selfish. We see their specks with crystal clarity. But our own faults, those massive planks we're carrying around, somehow those are invisible to us, or at least easy to rationalize and minimize. Jesus continues, "How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." Notice, he doesn't say, "Don't ever help your brother with his speck." He doesn't say, "Never address sin or problems in others' lives." What he says is, deal with your own stuff first. Get honest about your own failures before you start fixating on everyone else's. Because when you've wrestled with the plank in your own eye, when you've experienced the humility and grace of recognizing how much you need mercy, then you can help someone else with gentleness instead of judgment. Breathe slowly here, letting your chest rise and fall without effort, noticing how judgment requires tension while mercy allows softness. Think about how this works in practice. When we're judging someone else, cataloging their faults, building a case against them in our minds, there's a kind of self-righteousness that feels temporarily satisfying. It positions us as the one who's got it together, the one who sees clearly, the one who's above whatever that person is struggling with. But Jesus is saying that perspective is fundamentally distorted. You can't see clearly when you have a plank in your eye. Your judgment of others is always going to be skewed by your own unacknowledged issues. But here's what's deeper and perhaps harder to hear. We don't just do this with other people. We do this with ourselves. We're often harsher with ourselves than Jesus is with us, but in a particular way. We fixate on specks while ignoring planks. We beat ourselves up over small failures while refusing to address the deeper wounds and patterns that are actually causing problems. Or we flip it. We're lenient with our own big issues. That's just who I am, I can't help it, while being merciless about others' small ones. Jesus is calling us to a different way. He's inviting us to honesty, to the kind of self-awareness that sees our planks clearly, not to shame ourselves, but to receive grace. Because when you know you're the person with a plank in your eye, when you've experienced being helped instead of condemned, when you've felt the relief of someone treating you with gentleness instead of judgment, that changes how you see everyone else. For you tonight, if you've been harsh with yourself today, if you've been noticing every tiny flaw, every small failure, cataloging your inadequacies like you're building a case against yourself, What if God isn't doing that? What if He sees you with more compassion than you see yourself? What if the voice of relentless criticism in your head isn't His voice at all? Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you've been harsh with someone else today, mentally listing their failures, judging their choices, feeling superior to their struggles. What if that judgment is actually revealing something about your own unacknowledged planks? What if the things that bother you most in others are often shadows of things you haven't dealt with in yourself? Jesus isn't trying to make us paranoid or self-absorbed, constantly examining ourselves for problems. He's inviting us into honest self-awareness that makes room for grace, for ourselves and for others. When we acknowledge our planks, when we admit we're the ones who need mercy just as much as anyone else, we can stop performing and start being real. We can stop judging and start loving. The beautiful thing about this teaching is that it assumes we can help each other. Eventually, after dealing with your own plank, you can help your brother with his speck. We're meant to be in community, to help each other see clearly, to assist in healing and growth. But it has to come from a place of humility, from recognizing that we're all broken in different ways. We all have planks and specks. We all need grace. Tonight, lying here, you don't have to have this all figured out. You don't have to immediately identify every plank in your eye or become perfectly self-aware. You just have to know that Jesus is gentle with you about this. He uses humor, that absurd image of someone with a plank in their eye trying to perform eye surgery on someone else, because He knows we need that lightness. He's not condemning you for having planks. He's inviting you to acknowledge them so you can receive the help and grace you need. And maybe that gentleness toward yourself, that willingness to admit you're the one with the plank, not just everyone else. Maybe that's the beginning of being able to extend the same gentleness to others. When we stop pretending we have it all together, when we stop judging from a false position of superiority, we can finally start loving from a place of shared humanity, shared need, shared grace. Notice any tension in your forehead now, around your eyes, the places where you hold the effort of seeing clearly or judging accurately. Let that tension smooth out, your whole face softening. You don't have to see everything perfectly right now. You don't have to have everyone figured out, including yourself. Let your eyes stay closed, resting, releasing the need to examine and judge. You're held by someone who sees all your planks and loves you anyway. Jesus ends the Sermon on the Mount with a story about two builders and two different foundations. The crowd has been listening for a while now, absorbing teaching after teaching about worry and prayer, about judging others and trusting God, about what really matters and how to live. And now, Jesus is going to bring it all home with an image they'll never forget, something so simple and clear that even children will understand it. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, Jesus says, is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. He pauses, letting them picture it. Then, the rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. In that region, people knew exactly what he was talking about. Building on rock meant digging down through the soil until you hit bedrock, then setting your foundation there. It was harder work, more time-consuming, more expensive. But when the storms came, and they always came, the violent winter rains that turned dry wadis into raging torrents, a house built on rock would stand. The water might swirl around it, the wind might howl against it, but the foundation would hold. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice, Jesus continues, is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. Another pause. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Sand was easier. You could build quickly on sand, skip the hard work of digging to bedrock. For a while, the two houses might even look the same from the outside. Same structure, same design, both standing there looking solid and secure. But the difference wasn't visible until the storm came. And when it came, the house on sand didn't just get damaged, it collapsed completely. It fell with a great crash, total destruction. Let your breathing slow here, feeling the solid surface beneath your body, noticing how it holds your full weight without shifting. The crowd listening to Jesus would have understood this wasn't just about construction. He's been teaching them for chapters now about how to pray, how to trust, how to live, how to love. And now he's saying, you can hear all of this, and it can sound beautiful and inspiring and true. But if you don't actually build your life on it, if it stays as nice ideas that don't change how you actually live, then when the storms come, and they will come, you'll have nothing solid to stand on. Notice what Jesus doesn't say. He doesn't say the wise builder never faces storms. The rain comes down on both houses. The streams rise against both foundations. The winds blow and beat against both structures. Being wise, putting Jesus' words into practice, building on the rock, none of that exempts you from difficulty. Both builders face the same storm. The difference is what they're standing on when the storm hits. This is crucial because sometimes we think that if we're doing everything right, if we're faithful enough, if we're built on the right foundation, then life should be easy. We shouldn't face storms. But Jesus is clear. The storms come for everyone. The question isn't whether you'll face difficulty. It's what you'll be standing on when you do. Building on the rock means hearing Jesus' words and putting them into practice. It means actually living from trust instead of just agreeing that trust sounds nice. It means actually extending mercy instead of just believing mercy is a good idea. It means actually seeking God first instead of just thinking you should. It means the teachings we've been walking through tonight, all of them, becoming not just concepts you understand, but reality you live from. And here's what's gentle about this. Jesus isn't demanding perfection. He's not saying you have to get it all right all the time or your foundation is sand. The wise builder isn't the one who never makes mistakes. The wise builder is the one who, however imperfectly, is trying to live from these truths, who's practicing trust even when it's hard, who's choosing mercy over judgment even when judgment feels more satisfying, who's orienting their life around these teachings even when they fail at it regularly. For you tonight, putting Jesus' words into practice doesn't mean adding more items to an overwhelming to-do list. It doesn't mean becoming someone different before you can rest. Tonight, it might just mean this: lying here, choosing to trust that you're held instead of rehearsing all your worries. That's practice. That's building on rock. You're taking what Jesus taught about God as Father, about not worrying, about rest being a gift, and you're actually doing it, even if just for these hours. The storms will come. Some of them are already here. The uncertainty, the stress, the questions that don't have easy answers, the problems that feel too big to solve. But if you're resting on Jesus' words, if you're building your life on the truth that you're loved and held and not alone, then when everything shakes, you won't collapse. You might bend. You might feel the force of the wind and the rain. But the foundation will hold. And that foundation isn't you. That's the relief of it. You're not holding yourself up. You're not generating your own stability through sheer willpower or perfect spiritual performance. You're simply building on rock, on truth that's solid whether you feel it or not, on love that holds whether you're aware of it or not, on a God who doesn't shift or crack or wash away when storms come. Think about the difference between those two builders in their storms. The one on sand is panicking, trying desperately to shore things up, to save what's already collapsing. The one on rock might be scared, might be buffeted by the same wind and rain, but there's something underneath them that isn't moving. They can breathe even in the storm because they know the foundation is holding. Tonight, you don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to prove you've built perfectly on rock. You just have to trust that Jesus' words are solid, that they'll hold your weight, that choosing to rest in them, even when everything else feels unstable, is wise, not foolish. The storms come, but the rock remains. Feel the solid surface beneath you now, holding your full weight, not requiring you to hold yourself up or prove anything. Let your body grow heavier, more settled, trusting that what's underneath you is solid, that you don't have to create your own stability. Your breath slows naturally, your muscles releasing their grip, your whole being practicing what it means to be held by something that doesn't shift when storms come. The foundation holds. You can rest now. There's a story about a man no one liked who climbed a tree just to catch a glimpse of Jesus. It's one of those moments in the Gospels that shows us exactly how Jesus saw people that everyone else had written off, how he moved toward the ones others moved away from, how his love reached places where religious people said it shouldn't go. The scene is Jericho, a wealthy trading city, and there's a parade of people following Jesus through the crowded streets. Word has spread that he's coming, and everyone wants to see him, the teacher who heals and speaks with authority, who challenges the religious establishment and shows compassion to outsiders. The street is packed, people pressing in from all sides, craning their necks to get a glimpse. And then there's Zacchaeus. He's the chief tax collector in Jericho, which means he's wealthy and he's despised. Tax collectors in that culture weren't just doing an unpopular job. They were collaborators with Rome, traders who got rich by overtaxing their own people and pocketing the difference. Zacchaeus isn't just any tax collector. He's the chief, which means he's especially successful at this game, especially wealthy, especially hated. Picture him trying to see Jesus through this crowd. He's short. The scripture specifically mentions this detail because it matters. He can't see over the people in front of him, and you can be sure no one is making room for him. They might even be deliberately blocking his view, taking a small revenge on someone who's been taking from them for years. So Zacchaeus does something undignified, something almost comical for a wealthy, powerful man. He runs ahead of the crowd and climbs a sycamore tree. Imagine this: a grown man in expensive robes, scrambling up a tree like a child, perching in the branches with his dignity completely set aside. He just wants to see Jesus. He doesn't expect an interaction, doesn't imagine Jesus will notice him. He just wants a glimpse, a moment of seeing someone who represents something different than the life he's built for himself. Breathe here, noticing what it feels like in your body when you're reaching for something you're not sure you deserve. Jesus walks under that tree, and he stops. The whole crowd stops. Jesus looks up, and his eyes meet Zacchaeus' eyes, and he says something that changes everything. "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." Several things happen in that moment. First, Jesus knows his name. The despised tax collector, the man everyone avoids, the man hiding in a tree. Jesus knows his name. Second, Jesus doesn't say, "if you come down" or "after you repent." He says immediately. There's urgency, but it's not the urgency of judgment. It's the urgency of desire, of wanting to be with someone. Third, I must stay at your house. Not I might or I could, I must. Jesus is inviting himself into Zacchaeus' home, into his life, into his mess. And he's doing it before Zacchaeus has changed anything, before he's proven he's sorry, before he's made any of the restitution he'll later promise. The crowd starts grumbling. Of course they do. Jesus is supposed to stay with respectable people, with the righteous, with those who deserve his presence. But he's going to the house of a notorious sinner instead. He's choosing the outcast, the one everyone's written off, the one who's built his life on taking from others. But watch what happens when someone experiences being chosen instead of condemned. Zacchaeus scrambles down from that tree, his heart completely undone by this unexpected grace. He stands before Jesus and says, "Look, Lord, here and now, I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." That's not a condition Jesus set. That's not what Zacchaeus had to do to earn Jesus' presence. It's what happened because Jesus showed up. It's the fruit of being seen, being known, being chosen when you expected rejection. Transformation doesn't begin with condemnation. It begins with love that shows up before you're ready, before you're cleaned up, before you've proven anything. Jesus responds to Zacchaeus' declaration. Today, salvation has come to this house, because this man, too, is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Son of Abraham, part of the family, not an outsider, not a traitor, not someone who has to earn their way back in. He's always been a son, even when he was living like he wasn't. Even when everyone else had written him off. Jesus came to seek and save the lost, and that's not a category of people who are beyond reach. That's exactly who he's looking for. For you tonight, if you feel like Zacchaeus, isolated, ashamed, watching from a distance because you're sure you're not the kind of person Jesus would choose, hear this. He's still calling you by name. He still says, "I must stay with you." Not after you fix yourself, not after you prove you're sorry enough. Now, today, immediately. We spend so much energy trying to get our lives in order before we approach God, trying to become someone more acceptable, trying to clean up enough to deserve his attention. But Jesus keeps showing up in the mess, keeps calling people down from trees, keeps inviting himself into lives that aren't ready for him. Because he knows that transformation happens in relationship, not in isolation. It happens when you're known and chosen and loved, not when you're still trying to earn those things. Zacchaeus didn't stop being a tax collector before Jesus came to his house. The restitution, the giving to the poor, the changed life, all of that came after experiencing grace, not before. We've got it backwards when we think we have to change before we can be accepted. Jesus accepts first, then transformation becomes possible in that atmosphere of love and belonging. Tonight, you don't have to prove you deserve rest or peace or God's presence. You don't have to have it all together first. You can be the one in the tree, undignified and desperate for just a glimpse, and Jesus will still stop, still look up, still call your name. still invite himself into your mess. Not because you've earned it, because he came to seek and save the lost, and being lost is exactly what qualifies you for his attention. Let your breath move in and out now, like a door opening and closing. Jesus is welcome here, even in the parts of you that still feel broken or ashamed or unworthy. Feel your body relaxing into the truth that you're chosen, you're seen, you're a son or daughter, even when you've been living like you're not. You don't have to climb down perfectly. You don't have to have your restitution speech ready. You just have to receive the presence that's already offering itself to you. Rest in that. You're not watching from a distance anymore. You're invited in. In another story, 10 men cry out to Jesus for healing, and all 10 are healed. But only one comes back. It's a story about gratitude, yes, but it's also about something deeper. The difference between being healed and being made whole, between receiving a gift and recognizing the giver, between physical transformation and the kind of heart change that happens when you turn back to say thank you. The scene takes place on the road between Samaria and Galilee, in that border region where Jews and Samaritans sometimes crossed paths even though they usually avoided each other. 10 men are standing at a distance. The law required lepers to keep away from healthy people, to shout unclean if anyone approached. They weren't allowed in towns or villages, couldn't participate in worship, couldn't touch or be touched. They lived in isolation, watching life happen from the margins, their disease making them not just sick, but religiously unclean, socially dead. But they've heard about Jesus. They've heard he touches people no one else will touch, that he heals in ways that seem impossible, that he doesn't keep his distance from unclean things. So when they see him coming down the road, they call out, not getting closer, still keeping the required distance, but desperate enough to try. Jesus, Master, have pity on us. Picture Jesus stopping on that road, looking at these 10 men. He doesn't go to them. He doesn't touch them the way he sometimes does with lepers. He simply says, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." This would have seemed like an odd instruction. You only went to the priests to be declared clean after you'd been healed. They're not healed yet, but Jesus tells them to go anyway, as if the healing has already happened, as if it's just a matter of walking into what he's already speaking into being. And they go, all 10 of them. They start walking toward the priests, taking Jesus at his word even though nothing seems different yet. And as they go, Scripture says, as they went, they're healed. Somewhere on that journey, they look down at their hands and the lesions are gone. They touch their faces and feel smooth skin instead of decay. They're clean. They're healed. They can go home. They can embrace their families. They can rejoin society. Everything they've been hoping for, praying for, dreaming about, it's suddenly real. Feel your breath here, that moment of relief and release, like something tight finally letting go. 9 of them keep going. They're heading to the priests like Jesus said, probably running now, probably laughing and crying and barely believing it. They're going to get their official certificate of cleanliness, going to start rebuilding their lives, going to make up for lost time. And who could blame them? They've been healed of leprosy. That's life-changing, world-shifting. They're understandably overwhelmed. But one of them stops. One of them turns around and comes back. And here's what's striking. The text tells us he was a Samaritan. He's the double outcast, the one who's not just ritually unclean, but also ethnically wrong, religiously suspect, the one a Jewish teacher like Jesus shouldn't even be talking to. And he's the only one who returns. He comes back praising God in a loud voice, not caring who hears him. And he throws himself at Jesus' feet, thanking him. Just thanking him. Not asking for anything else. Not negotiating for more, just overwhelmed with gratitude and unable to do anything but fall down and say thank you. Jesus looks at this Samaritan at his feet, and he asks a question that's tinged with sadness. Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? It's not that he's angry. It's that he's noticing something profound about human nature, about how easily we take gifts and run, how quickly we forget the giver in our excitement about the gift. Then, he says something beautiful to the Samaritan. Rise and go. Your faith has made you well. But wait, he was already healed. All 10 were healed. So what's Jesus talking about? The Greek word here is different from the word used for the initial healing. This word means something more like made whole or saved. The other 9 got their physical healing, but this one, the one who came back, the one who turned gratitude into worship, the one who recognized Jesus as more than just a miracle worker, he received something deeper. He was made whole in a way that went beyond his skin being restored. For you tonight, this story isn't about feeling guilty if you haven't been grateful enough. It's not about God withholding blessing if you don't say thank you properly. All 10 men were healed regardless of whether they came back. Jesus didn't revoke their healing because only one returned. The gift was given freely, completely, no strings attached. But there's something powerful in returning, in acknowledging, in letting gratitude reshape your heart. The 9 who didn't come back got their healing, but they missed the encounter. They got the gift, but missed the giver. They had their lives changed, but didn't let their hearts be changed in the process. We do this, don't we? We receive blessings, some obvious, some so constant we don't even notice them. And we keep moving, keep planning the next thing, keep focusing on what's still wrong or what we still need. The breath in our lungs, the bed beneath us, the moments of grace scattered through even difficult days. How often do we turn back to acknowledge them, to let gratitude do its slow work of transforming how we see everything? Tonight, you don't have to suddenly become perfectly grateful or feel bad about all the times you haven't said thank you. Gratitude isn't a transaction where God only blesses you if you thank him properly. He heals, he gives, he loves freely without keeping score. But there's a gift waiting in the returning, in the acknowledging, in the simple act of noticing what you've been given and letting yourself feel it. The Samaritan was made whole, not because his thank you earned him extra points, but because gratitude opened something in him that allowed the healing to go deeper. When you stop running long enough to acknowledge grace, something shifts. You're not just receiving gifts anymore. You're in relationship with the giver. You're not just getting through life with occasional blessings. You're waking up to the reality that you're held, you're seen, you're loved all the way through. So maybe tonight, even with everything that's hard, everything that's unresolved, everything you're still carrying, maybe there's something small to turn back toward. One breath of thank you for this moment of rest. One recognition that you're not alone even when you feel alone. One acknowledgement that making it through today, however imperfectly, was itself a kind of grace. With your next breath, let there be a quiet sense of thanks, not manufactured, not forced, just a gentle noticing of something good, however small. Feel your chest expanding with that breath, making room for gratitude alongside everything else you're holding. Notice how your body responds when you pause to acknowledge what's already been given, already been sustained, already been held. You don't have to be perfectly grateful. You just have to turn back, even for a moment, and let yourself receive not just the gift, but the love behind it. One of the most famous moments in Jesus' ministry happened on a hillside when thousands of people had followed him all day, and everyone suddenly realized they were hungry and far from home, and there was no food. It's a story about provision, yes, but it's also a story about what happens when we offer Jesus what little we have and trust him with our inadequacy. Picture the scene late in the afternoon. The Sea of Galilee stretches out below, blue and vast, and the hillside is covered with people. Matthew says 5,000 men, which means with women and children there could have been 15 or 20,000 people total. They've been listening to Jesus teach, watching him heal, completely absorbed in what's happening. But now, the day is getting late, shadows growing longer, and the disciples are getting nervous. This crowd needs to eat, and there's nowhere nearby to buy food. And even if there were, it would cost a fortune to feed this many people. The disciples come to Jesus with what seems like a reasonable suggestion. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. It makes sense. Dismiss the crowd before this becomes a crisis. Let everyone solve their own food problem. But Jesus responds with something that must have seemed completely unreasonable. You give them something to eat. You can almost hear the disciples panic. Us? Give them something to eat? We don't have anything. We're not prepared for this. This is too big for us. Philip does some quick math. It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. It's hopeless. The need is massive, and their resources are laughable. Then Andrew speaks up, and you can hear the doubt in his voice even as he mentions it. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Take a slow breath here, noticing what it feels like in your body when you're faced with overwhelming need and inadequate resources. Think about this boy for a moment. He probably packed this lunch this morning. Maybe his mother made it for him. 5 small barley loaves, the bread of the poor, not wheat, but barley. And 2 small fish, probably dried or pickled, meant to be eaten with the bread. It's a child's lunch, meant for one person for one day. And now there are thousands of hungry people, and somehow this boy's lunch is being discussed as if it might matter. Jesus doesn't laugh at the inadequacy. He doesn't say, "That's not nearly enough. Don't bother." He says, "Bring them to me, the loaves and the fish. Bring what you have, however small it seems, however insufficient. Bring it and let me work with it." The disciples have the people sit down on the grass, all of them, thousands of people arranged in groups. Jesus takes the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looks up to heaven, and gives thanks. He gives thanks for 5 loaves and 2 fish in front of 15,000 hungry people. He thanks the Father for what seems like nothing, for what couldn't possibly be enough. And then he starts breaking the bread and distributing it, and it multiplies. Somehow, impossibly, there's enough. Not just barely enough, abundant enough. Everyone eats, everyone is satisfied, and when they collect the leftovers, there are 12 baskets full, more than they started with. The boy's inadequate lunch, placed in Jesus' hands, becomes a feast that feeds thousands with plenty left over. For you tonight, this story matters because you know what it feels like to face massive need with inadequate resources. You know what it's like to look at everything that's required of you, emotionally, practically, spiritually, and realize you don't have nearly enough. Your energy feels like 5 loaves. Your faith feels like 2 fish. Your capacity to handle everything feels laughably small compared to what's being asked of you. And Jesus says, "Bring it to me." Don't wait until you have more. Don't apologize for how small it is. Don't try to make it seem bigger than it is. Just bring what you actually have, your actual energy, your actual faith, your actual capacity, and place it in my hands. We waste so much time feeling ashamed of our inadequacy, trying to hide how little we have, pretending we're more resourced than we are, or we simply give up, deciding that if we can't do it all perfectly, if we don't have enough, there's no point in trying. But Jesus keeps asking for what we actually have, not what we wish we had. He takes the 5 loaves, not the 50 we think we should have. He takes the 2 fish, not the feast we think he deserves. The multiplication happens in his hands, not ours. Our job isn't to somehow make 5 loaves become 5,000. Our job is just to bring what we have and trust him with it. The boy didn't multiply his lunch. He just offered it. Jesus did the multiplying. And somehow, mysteriously, what was insufficient becomes abundant when it passes through his hands. Think about what this means for tonight. You're lying here tired, maybe feeling like you've got nothing left, like you're running on empty, like you should have more to offer, more patience, more faith, more strength, more capacity. What if the little you have is actually enough when you place it in Jesus' hands? What if your 5 loaves, your ability to show up tomorrow, your willingness to keep going even when it's hard, your small prayers that barely feel like faith? What if that's exactly what he wants to work with? You don't have to have more than you have. You don't have to be more than you are. You just have to bring it, however small it seems, and trust that he can do something with it that you couldn't do on your own. The multiplication is his work, not yours. Your work is just the offering, just the showing up with what's actually in your hands. Tonight, whatever feels inadequate in you, your faith, your energy, your hope, your capacity, what if you stopped apologizing for it and just offered it? What if you said, "This is what I have. It's not much, but it's yours." And then you let him be the one who decides what can be done with it, how it can be multiplied, who can be fed by it. Let your hands rest open now, palms up if that feels right, in the posture of offering what little you have rather than hiding it or clutching it in shame. Feel your breath deepening, your body releasing the tension of trying to be more than you are, trying to have more than you have. You can bring your 5 loaves, you can offer your 2 fish, and somehow, in ways you won't understand, it will be enough, more than enough. There will even be baskets left over. Rest in that strange mathematics of grace where inadequacy placed in Jesus' hands becomes abundance you couldn't have imagined. The next day, after that miraculous feeding on the hillside, the crowd finds Jesus again. They've crossed the Sea of Galilee looking for him, and when they finally locate him in Capernaum, they're excited, energized, ready for more. They want another sign, another miracle, another meal perhaps. But Jesus sees right through their enthusiasm to the hunger underneath. And it's not the kind of hunger bread can satisfy. The scene is the synagogue in Capernaum, a limestone building where the community gathers for teaching and prayer. The crowd presses in, filling the space, their voices echoing off the stone walls. They're asking Jesus questions, wanting to know how he got there, when he arrived. But Jesus doesn't engage with their curiosity. Instead, he goes straight to the heart of what's happening. "Very truly, I tell you," he says, "you are looking for me, not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you." There's a shift happening in the conversation. Jesus is trying to move them from thinking about physical bread to thinking about something deeper, something more lasting. But they're not quite getting it yet. They're still thinking in material terms, still focused on the miracle of the loaves, still wanting more of what they can see and touch and taste. The conversation goes back and forth for a while, with the crowd bringing up manna, the bread from heaven that sustained Israel in the wilderness. They're asking Jesus to do something like that, to give them a sign from heaven, to prove himself the way Moses proved God's power. And that's when Jesus says something that changes everything, that cuts through all their questions and expectations and brings them face to face with who he really is. "I am the bread of life," he declares. "Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." Breathe slowly here, letting your body settle deeper as we move from physical hunger to the hunger of the soul. Think about what he's saying. He's not talking about being a provider of bread. He's saying he is the bread. He's not offering to give them what they need. He's saying he is what they need. All the hunger in every human heart, all the searching and striving and trying to fill the emptiness with things that don't quite satisfy. He's saying he's the answer to that. Not partially, not temporarily, completely and forever. "Whoever comes to me will never go hungry." It's a stunning claim. We know what it's like to be physically hungry, that gnawing sensation, that preoccupation with food, that inability to focus on anything else until the need is met. And most of us know what it's like to be spiritually hungry too, even if we don't always name it that way. That sense that something's missing, that nothing quite fills the void. That restlessness that keeps us moving from thing to thing, relationship to relationship, achievement to achievement, looking for something to make us feel whole, complete, satisfied. We try to feed that hunger with so many things: success, approval, control, entertainment, romance, money, achievement. And for a moment, sometimes those things feel like they're working. We feel satisfied, fulfilled, like we've finally found it. But then the hunger returns. The satisfaction fades. We're back to searching, back to striving, back to trying to fill something that seems endlessly empty. Jesus is saying, I am what that hunger is actually for. Not success that mirrors me, not love that points to me, not satisfaction that resembles me, myself, the actual bread that actually satisfies. Come to me, and the deep hunger in your soul, the one you've been trying to feed with everything else, that hunger finally gets fed with what it was made for. I am the bread of life. Not, I can point you toward the bread, or I know where you can find bread. I am the bread, the sustenance your soul needs to live, to thrive, to be whole. That's me. And the beautiful thing is, this bread doesn't run out. You don't have to ration it or worry about having enough. You don't have to compete for it or earn your portion. It's freely given, abundantly available, enough for everyone who comes. For you tonight, lying here in the dark, if you're hungry for something, peace, purpose, belonging, rest, wholeness, the sense that your life means something and you're not just surviving, that hunger isn't wrong. You're not broken for wanting more than what the world offers. You're human. That hunger is actually pointing you somewhere, pointing you toward someone. Jesus is saying, He is that provision, not a spiritual snack to tide you over until something better comes along, not a supplement to everything else you're trying to feed your soul with. Bread, the main course, the sustenance, the life. We make this so complicated, don't we? We think spiritual hunger must be met through spiritual techniques, perfect prayers, enough Bible reading, the right church activities, sufficient devotional time. And those things can be good, can be helpful, can create space for encounter. But Jesus keeps it simple. Come to me, not to the techniques, not to the system, to me, the living bread, the actual person of Jesus who satisfies in ways nothing else can. Think about what bread does. It sustains, it nourishes, it gives you energy to live, to work, to love, to keep going. Without bread, without food, you weaken, you fade, you eventually die. Jesus is saying, that's what I am for your soul, not optional, not a nice addition to an already complete life, essential, the thing without which you're slowly starving, even if you don't realize it. And he doesn't just satisfy once. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. The hunger doesn't keep returning the way it does with physical food or with all those other things we try to fill ourselves with. There's a permanent satisfaction that comes from being connected to the source of life itself. It doesn't mean you never struggle or doubt or feel empty in moments. It means the deep, soul-level hunger, the one that drives so much of our restless searching, that one gets answered, gets filled, gets met with something real and lasting. Tonight, you don't have to understand all the theology of how this works. You don't have to figure out exactly what it means for Jesus to be bread or how a person satisfies hunger. You just have to know that if you're hungry for rest, for peace, for meaning, for love, for the sense that you matter and you're not alone, he's saying that hunger can be met in him, not in trying harder or being better or achieving more. In him, the bread of life, the one who satisfies. You can come right now, just as you are, with whatever hunger you're carrying. You don't have to dress it up or make it sound spiritual. You can be honest about what you're actually hungry for, even if it's messy, even if it doesn't sound religious, even if you're not sure it's the right kind of hunger. Bring it. Come with it. And let the bread of life do what bread does. Nourish, sustain, satisfy. Let your breathing slow even more now, like your body is remembering what it means to be fed, to be satisfied, to not have to search anymore because you found what you were looking for. Feel your chest rising and falling with each breath, taking in what you need, releasing what you don't. You're being nourished even now, even in the dark, even when you can't see or feel or understand it fully. The bread of life is here. You're being fed. Rest in that. Later, during the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem, Jesus makes another bold claim about who he is and what he offers to anyone who will listen. The city is crowded with pilgrims who've come for the festival, and the temple courts are alive with activity. People praying, teaching, debating, celebrating. Enormous golden lampstands have been lit, their flames blazing bright against the night sky, commemorating the pillar of fire that led Israel through the wilderness, symbolizing God's presence with his people in their darkest hours. Jesus is standing there in the temple courts, surrounded by these massive lamps, their light dancing across the stone walls and the faces of the crowd. The symbolism would have been impossible to miss. These lampstands were meant to represent God's guiding presence, the light that showed the way when everything else was dark. And into that moment, with all those literal flames burning around him, Jesus speaks words that must have shocked everyone listening. "I am the light of the world," he says. Not I represent the light, or I point toward the light. I am the light, the actual presence of God, the actual illumination, the actual guide through darkness. Everything these lamps symbolize, I am the reality they're pointing to. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Picture the crowd's reaction. Some are intrigued, leaning in, wanting to understand what he means. Others are offended. Who does he think he is? Claiming to be what only God can be. Some are confused, trying to reconcile this carpenter from Nazareth with the enormous claim he's making. But Jesus doesn't soften it or explain it away. He stands there in the light of those lamps and says, I am what you think you're celebrating. I am the light you've been waiting for. Let your eyes rest gently closed, noticing how darkness isn't threatening when you know you're held. Think about what light does. It reveals. It guides. It makes sight possible. Before light, you're fumbling in the dark, unsure of your steps, unable to see what's ahead or what's right in front of you. But light changes everything. Suddenly you can see where you're going. You can navigate obstacles. You can find your way. You're not stumbling anymore. Jesus is saying, that's what I am for your life. Not a spotlight that exposes and shames, but a gentle light that guides and illuminates. Not a harsh interrogation lamp that makes you want to hide, but a warm presence that helps you see clearly, see yourself truly, see God truly, see what really matters and what's just distraction. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. This doesn't mean your circumstances will always be clear or easy. It doesn't mean you'll never have questions or doubts or moments when you can't see the path ahead. It means you won't be alone in the darkness. The light is with you, walking with you, showing you enough to take the next step, even when you can't see the whole journey. We're so afraid of darkness, aren't we? Literal darkness when we're children, afraid of what might be hiding in the shadows, but also metaphorical darkness, the uncertainty of the future, the unknown territories we have to walk through, the times when we can't see how things will work out or what we're supposed to do next. We want clarity, certainty, the whole path lit up from beginning to end so we can see exactly where we're going and how it's all going to turn out. But Jesus doesn't promise to light up the whole path. He promises to be the light as you walk. It's different. You don't get to see everything from a distance, but you get something better, His presence. The light, Himself walking with you, showing you enough for this step, this moment, this part of the journey. Think about walking at night with a flashlight or a lamp. You can only see a small circle around you, maybe the next few steps ahead. You can't see the destination. You can't see around the bend in the path. But you have enough light for now, for this step. And that's all you need. Because the light moves with you. As you step forward, the circle of light moves too. You're never walking into total darkness because the light is walking with you. That's what Jesus is offering, not a distant sun that illuminates everything from far away, but a companion who walks close, whose presence makes sight possible even in the darkest places. I am the light of the world, not the light far away in the sky, but the light right here, right with you, personal and present and close. For you tonight, lying here in literal darkness, you're not alone in it. The light isn't something you have to generate on your own or work up through spiritual effort. It's someone who walks with you, who illuminates what you need to see, who guides without condemning, who shows truth without crushing you with it. Maybe you're in a dark place right now. Uncertainty, grief, confusion, fear, not knowing what comes next or how you'll get through it. That's real darkness, and Jesus doesn't minimize it or tell you to pretend it's not dark, but he offers himself. I am the light of the world. Not, I was the light 2,000 years ago, or I will be the light eventually. I am. Present tense. Right now. In this darkness you're experiencing, I am light. And you don't have to be good at following. You don't have to navigate perfectly. You just have to stay close to the light. You don't have to see the whole path. You just have to trust that the light sees it, and the light is not going to abandon you to stumble alone. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. Not because the darkness disappears, but because you're not walking through it alone. We waste so much energy trying to manufacture our own light, trying to figure everything out, trying to force clarity, trying to control outcomes so we don't have to walk in uncertainty. But what if you could stop trying to be your own light? What if you could walk close to the light instead, trusting that he illuminates enough for this moment, this step, this breath? Tonight, you don't have to see your whole future. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to force clarity about things that are still genuinely unclear. You just have to trust that the light is here, in this darkness, closer than your breath, and he's not going anywhere. You're not navigating alone. You're not left to stumble without guidance. The light of the world is with you. Notice the darkness around you now, but notice it differently, not as something to fear or fight, but as a place where rest happens, where the light's presence is gentle and warm rather than harsh and exposing. Feel your body settling deeper, releasing the effort of trying to see everything, trying to illuminate your own path. You can rest in the dark because the light is here. You don't have to stay alert. You don't have to keep watch. The light is keeping watch. Let your eyes stay closed, your breathing slow and steady, trusting that you're safe in the darkness because the light of the world is here with you, and he never goes out. Jesus tells his listeners that he's not just a teacher or a healer, or even a miracle worker. He's a shepherd. It's a claim that would have resonated deeply with people in an agricultural society where shepherding was intimate, personal work. Everyone knew what shepherds did, how they lived, what the relationship between shepherd and sheep looked like. And Jesus is saying, that's what I am to you. The scene might be one of those quiet teaching moments, maybe sitting with his disciples, maybe speaking to a larger crowd. He's just healed a blind man, which has caused controversy with the religious leaders. They're upset that he healed on the Sabbath, more concerned about rule-keeping than about the man's restored sight. And Jesus uses this moment to draw a stark contrast between the kind of religious leadership that wounds people and the kind of care he offers. I am the good shepherd, he says. The emphasis on good matters. There are bad shepherds, hired hands who don't really care about the sheep, who run when danger comes. But Jesus is saying he's the good kind, the kind who stays, who protects, who would rather die than lose even one sheep. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. This isn't theoretical. He's going to do exactly this. In a few months, he'll be on a cross, laying down his life for the very people who rejected him, who didn't recognize him, who thought they didn't need a shepherd. But right now, he's telling them what kind of shepherd he is, the kind who doesn't just risk his life, but actually gives it. Think about shepherding in first century Palestine. It wasn't a romanticized, pastoral job. It was hard, dangerous work. Shepherds lived with their flocks, slept in the fields with them, fought off predators, wolves, bears, lions, thieves. They knew their sheep individually, could recognize each one's voice and gait and personality. They led them to pasture, found water for them, protected them from danger, carried the weak ones, searched for the lost ones. And at night, the shepherd would literally lie down at the entrance to the sheepfold, becoming a human gate. Any predator that wanted to get to the sheep would have to go through the shepherd first. The shepherd's body was the door, the protection, the last line of defense. If anything threatened the flock, the shepherd was the first to face it. Breathe into that image, feeling what it means to be protected by someone who would rather face danger themselves than let it reach you. Jesus continues, "I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep." There's incredible intimacy in that phrase, "I know my sheep." This isn't knowing about them from a distance. This is personal, particular knowledge. He knows your name. He knows your voice. He knows when you're struggling, when you're afraid, when you're about to wander. He knows what makes you afraid, what comforts you, what you need before you know you need it. And my sheep know me. It's mutual. Sheep in that culture could recognize their shepherd's voice among many voices. If multiple flocks mingled at a watering hole, each shepherd could call his own sheep, and they would separate out, following the voice they knew. Not because they were exceptionally smart, but because they knew that voice, trusted it, had learned that it led to safety and provision. For you tonight, you are known. Not as a number in a flock too large for individual attention, not as a problem to manage or a project to fix. Known by name, known in your particularity, your struggles, your story. The Good Shepherd isn't overwhelmed by how many sheep there are. He knows you specifically, personally, intimately, and he's not just passively watching from a distance. He's actively involved in your protection, your provision, your care. When danger comes, and it does come, whether it's external threats or internal struggles, or the predators of fear and shame and despair, the shepherd stands between you and it. He doesn't send someone else. He doesn't delegate your safety. He puts himself in harm's way. We try so hard to be our own shepherds, don't we? We try to protect ourselves, provide for ourselves, navigate threats on our own. We're vigilant, constantly scanning for danger, exhausting ourselves trying to stay safe. But Jesus is saying, that's my job. That's what a shepherd does. You don't have to be both the shepherd and the sheep. You can be the sheep, vulnerable, dependent, trusting, because the shepherd is keeping watch. This is hard for us because being a sheep feels weak. We want to be strong, independent, self-sufficient. We want to be the ones in control, the ones who don't need help. But Jesus keeps using this image of sheep and shepherd because he knows something we forget. Sheep aren't strong, but they're safe. Not because of what they can do for themselves, but because of who their shepherd is. Tonight, as you lie here, you're practicing being a sheep. You're not in control. You're not keeping watch. You're not protecting yourself or figuring out how to navigate tomorrow's dangers. You're simply resting, trusting that someone else is awake, someone else is guarding, someone else is standing between you and whatever might threaten your peace. The shepherd isn't going anywhere. Even while you sleep, he's keeping watch. Even when you're too tired to pray, he's interceding. Even when you can't see the path or sense his presence, he's there, leading, protecting, calling you by name. You're not alone in the night. You're not unguarded. The Good Shepherd is here, and he would rather face every threat himself than let anything harm you. Let your whole body relax now into that truth, like a sheep lying down in green pastures, trusting completely that someone else is standing guard. Feel your muscles releasing their tension, your breath becoming slower and deeper, your mind finally quieting because you don't have to stay alert. You're not the shepherd tonight. You're the sheep, and the shepherd is good. He doesn't abandon his flock. He doesn't sleep on the job. He's here, watching over you, closer than you know. Rest in that. Let yourself be known, be protected, be held. You're safe enough to sleep. Religious leaders once criticized Jesus for healing on the Sabbath, and his response reveals something crucial about rest that we've gotten backwards. The scene is a synagogue, and there's a man there with a shriveled hand. The Pharisees are watching Jesus closely, not with curiosity or hope, but with suspicion. They're looking for a reason to accuse him, and they think they've found one. It's the Sabbath, and healing is considered work, and work is forbidden on the Sabbath. You can feel the tension in the room. Everyone knows the man is there. Everyone can see his withered hand, and everyone is watching to see what Jesus will do. Will he ignore the man to keep the religious rules? Or will he heal and give them ammunition for their accusations? Jesus doesn't just heal the man, he confronts the entire system that's turned rest into a burden. He calls the man forward, making him stand in front of everyone. Then he asks a question, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? The Pharisees won't answer, because any answer implicates them. So Jesus looks around at them with anger. The text actually says anger, one of the few times we see Jesus angry, grieved at their hardness of heart. Then he tells the man to stretch out his hand, and it's healed. The Pharisees immediately begin plotting how to kill him, because he healed someone on the Sabbath, because he violated their rules about what rest should look like, because he suggested that doing good, bringing healing, showing mercy, that these things don't violate rest, they fulfill it. Later, when the disciples are walking through grain fields on the Sabbath and pluck some heads of grain to eat, which was technically harvesting, technically work, technically forbidden, the Pharisees confront Jesus again. And that's when he says something that should change how we think about rest forever. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Let your jaw unclench here, releasing any tension you're holding about whether you're resting correctly. Think about what a revolutionary statement this is. The religious leaders had turned Sabbath into a test you could fail. They'd created elaborate rules about what qualified as work, how many steps you could walk, what you could carry, what activities were permitted. Rest had become a performance, something you had to do right or risk God's disapproval. The day meant for restoration had become another source of anxiety, another way to measure whether you were good enough. But Jesus says no. The Sabbath was made for man. Rest is a gift, not a requirement. It's designed for your flourishing, your restoration, your benefit. It's not a hoop to jump through or a test to pass. God isn't grading your rest, watching to make sure you're resting correctly. He's offering you something your body and soul desperately need. Not man for the Sabbath. You weren't created to serve the institution of rest. Rest was created to serve you, to give you what you need, to restore what gets depleted, to remind you that your worth isn't determined by your productivity, that you're loved whether you're working or sleeping, striving or stopping. The religious leaders had made rest into work. They'd turned a gift into a burden. And Jesus is dismantling that entire system with one sentence. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to need it. You're allowed to receive it without guilt or anxiety about whether you're doing it right. For you tonight, this matters enormously because we've internalized those Pharisees' voices. We feel guilty for resting. We think we should be doing more, being more productive, pushing through our exhaustion. We worry that rest is laziness, that stopping is giving up, that lying here when there are things undone is somehow failing. But Jesus is saying, no, rest was made for you. This, lying here, breathing, letting your body recover, giving your mind permission to stop. This isn't failure. This is wisdom. This is receiving a gift that God Himself designed into creation from the beginning. On the seventh day, God rested. Not because He was tired, He's God, but to model for us that rest is holy, that stopping is sacred, that we're not machines meant to run constantly until we break down. You don't have to earn the right to rest by finishing everything first. You don't have to rest perfectly or worry about whether you're doing it the right way. Rest isn't something you can fail at. It's a gift you receive, and the only way to fail is to refuse to receive it, to keep striving when your body and soul are crying out for you to stop. Think about the man with the shriveled hand. Jesus healed him on the Sabbath precisely because rest is supposed to bring restoration, not withhold it. Rest is supposed to make you more whole, more human, more yourself, and anything, any rule, any system, any voice in your head that makes rest into another source of anxiety or performance isn't from God. God's rest gives life. It doesn't drain it. Tonight, you have permission to rest. Not permission you have to earn, but permission that's already yours. The Sabbath was made for you. Rest is a gift, not a test. Your worth doesn't come from how productive you are or how much you accomplish. You can stop. You can sleep. You can let things be undone. And God isn't disappointed. He's glad. He made rest for you because He knows what you need. And right now, you need this stopping, this breathing, this letting go. Let go of any last effort to do rest right now. Just be here. That's enough. Feel your body sinking deeper into the surface beneath you, your breathing becoming slower and more rhythmic, your mind releasing its grip on all the things you think you should be doing. Rest isn't something you achieve. It's something you receive, and it's yours. Not because you've done enough today to deserve it, but because you're human, and rest was made for humans, made for you. Right now, this moment, this breath, you're allowed. Let everything else go. On the night before He died, Jesus told His disciples a parable that redefined everything they thought they knew about spiritual growth and fruitfulness. They're in the upper room, sharing what will be their last meal together before the crucifixion, and the weight of what's coming is heavy in the air. Jesus knows He's going to die. He knows they're going to scatter, going to hide, going to doubt everything they thought they understood. And He wants to give them language for what life with Him will be like when He's no longer physically present. I am the vine, He says. You are the branches. It's an image from the vineyards that covered the hillsides around Jerusalem, something everyone in that room would have seen countless times. A grapevine with its thick central trunk and the branches extending from it, covered in leaves and clusters of grapes. The vine and the branches aren't separate things. They're one organism, one system of life flowing from root to fruit. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Think about how a vine works. The branch doesn't strain to produce grapes. It doesn't wake up every morning and try really hard to generate fruit through sheer willpower. The branch simply stays connected to the vine, and the life of the vine flows through it naturally, inevitably producing fruit. The branch's job isn't to manufacture anything, it's just to remain, to stay connected, to let the life flow. Picture one of those branches heavy with clusters of grapes, bending under the weight of the fruit. That branch isn't anxious about whether it's producing enough. It's not comparing itself to other branches or worrying that it's not doing enough. It's simply receiving life from the vine and allowing that life to do what it naturally does, produce fruit. Take a slow breath here, noticing how breath comes without effort, without striving, just a natural receiving and releasing. Remain in me as I also remain in you. That word remain, or abide in some translations, it's not about working harder. It's about staying close. It's about connection, relationship, presence. It's the opposite of striving. It's more like dwelling, living, being at home in someone. Jesus is completely redefining how spiritual growth works. The disciples have been raised in a religious system that's all about effort, doing more, trying harder, following more rules, proving your devotion through constant activity. But Jesus is saying, no. That's not how life with me works. You don't produce fruit through effort. You produce fruit through connection, through remaining, through allowing my life to flow through you. Apart from me, you can do nothing. This isn't condemnation, it's liberation. It means you can stop trying to generate spiritual life on your own. You can stop striving to be good enough or fruitful enough or faithful enough through your own power. Because it's not your power that produces fruit anyway. It's His life flowing through you. Think about what happens when a branch gets cut off from the vine. At first, it might even look fine. Still green, still shaped like a branch, still recognizable. But it's dying. Without the connection to the vine, without that flow of life, it's just a matter of time before it withers. It doesn't matter how hard the branch tries. It doesn't matter how much it wants to produce fruit. Without the vine, it can't. But when the branch stays connected, fruit is inevitable. Not because the branch is trying so hard, but because that's what happens when life flows. The branch doesn't have to figure out how to manufacture grapes. It just has to stay attached, stay open, let the life of the vine do what it naturally does. For you tonight, remaining isn't about working harder at your spiritual life. It's not about doing more devotions or praying longer or trying to feel closer to God. Remaining is about staying connected. And here's the secret. He remains in you, even when you feel disconnected, even when you can't sense His presence, even when your faith feels weak and your connection feels fragile. I in you isn't conditional on your perfect performance. He's there. He's committed to remaining. Your job isn't to keep Him there. It's to trust that He is and to let that life flow. We make this so complicated. We think we have to produce fruit through effort, through discipline, through getting our spiritual act together. We look at our lives and see areas where we're not bearing fruit, where we're not patient enough, or loving enough, or faithful enough, and we think the solution is to try harder. But Jesus is saying, the solution is to remain, to stay close, to stop striving, and start receiving. Think about tonight. You're lying here, not doing anything productive, not achieving, not striving, not working on your spiritual life, just remaining, just being here, breathing, resting. And that's enough. That's actually what Jesus is talking about. Remaining doesn't require activity. It just requires presence, connection, the simple choice to stay close rather than cut yourself off. The branches don't decide when to produce fruit or how much. They don't control the timeline or the quantity. They just stay connected and let the vine do what the vine does. Some seasons there's abundant fruit. Some seasons there's rest and dormancy. Both are part of the natural cycle. Both are okay. The branch doesn't panic during dormant seasons, wondering if it's failing. It just remains, trusting that in the right season, when the conditions are right, fruit will come. You don't have to produce fruit tonight. You don't have to be fruitful in any visible way. You just have to remain. And remaining, right now, looks like this: resting, breathing, trusting that the vine's life is flowing through you even when you can't feel it, even when you can't see any evidence of fruit, even when you feel more like a dormant branch than a fruitful one. With each breath now, imagine drawing life from a source outside yourself, from the vine, not having to generate anything on your own. Feel your chest rising and falling in a rhythm you don't have to create or maintain. It just happens, just like fruit just happens when you're connected to the source of life. Let your whole body be heavy and still, a branch at rest, not striving, not producing, just remaining, connected, held, part of something larger than yourself. The vine remains in you. You don't have to earn that or maintain that through effort. You just have to trust it, rest in it, let it be true, even when you can't feel it. The life flows whether you sense it or not. You're connected. You can rest. In that same conversation on the night before the cross, Jesus makes a promise that sounds almost impossible given what's about to happen to him. The disciples are gathered around him in the upper room, and the atmosphere is thick with unspoken dread. Jesus has been saying things that don't make sense, that he's going away, that they can't follow him yet, that one of them will betray him. Peter has just insisted he'll never deny Jesus, and Jesus has gently told him that before the rooster crows, Peter will deny him 3 times. The disciples are confused, anxious, sensing that something terrible is coming, even if they don't understand exactly what. And into that moment of fear and uncertainty, Jesus speaks about peace. "Peace I leave with you," he says. "My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Think about the audacity of this promise. Jesus knows exactly what's about to happen. In a few hours, he'll be arrested in a garden, betrayed by one of these very disciples sitting with him now. He'll be beaten, mocked, put through a sham trial, sentenced to death. He'll hang on a cross for hours in excruciating pain. And he's talking about peace, his peace, the peace he's giving them. The disciples don't understand yet, but they will. They'll remember these words in the chaos of the arrest, in the horror of the crucifixion, in the bewildering grief of the days between Friday and Sunday. They'll remember that he promised peace, not the absence of trouble, but his presence in the middle of it. Picture Jesus in that room, his face calm despite what he knows is coming. He's not pretending everything will be fine. He's not offering false comfort or empty reassurance. He's giving them something real, something that will hold when everything else falls apart. His peace. Not a feeling of everything being okay, but a deep, unshakable reality that transcends circumstances. "Peace I leave with you." It's inheritance language, the way someone makes a bequest in their will. Jesus is about to die, and he's leaving them his peace the way others might leave property or money. But this peace isn't something they'll only receive after he's gone. He's giving it to them now, in the present. "My peace I give you." Present tense, right now, in this room, before the betrayal, before the cross, before the resurrection. The peace is theirs already. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears as you breathe, noticing how peace isn't something you have to generate, but something you receive. I do not give to you as the world gives. This is crucial. The world's peace is conditional, fragile, dependent on circumstances. The world says, you can have peace when everything's going well, when you're in control, when the future is certain, when there's no conflict or danger or loss. But that kind of peace is always temporary, always one crisis away from collapse. It's peace that exists only in the absence of trouble. But Jesus' peace is different. It's not circumstantial. It's rooted in his presence. It's not dependent on everything going well. It exists in the middle of betrayal and crucifixion and death itself. It's not the peace of a calm sea, but the peace of knowing the one who commands the sea, who's with you in the boat even when the storm is raging. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. He's already said this once earlier in the conversation, and now he says it again. Not because they won't feel troubled or afraid. They will. They're human. But because beneath the trouble and fear, there's something more solid, more true. His peace, his presence, the reality that doesn't shift even when everything else does. Think about what peace means in Scripture. The Hebrew word is shalom. It's not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of wholeness, completeness, everything being as it should be in relation to God. It's harmony, restoration, the sense that you're held in something larger than yourself, something good and purposeful and loving. That's what Jesus is giving. Not the absence of trouble, but the presence of himself, which makes you whole even when circumstances are broken. For you tonight, this peace isn't a feeling you have to conjure or a mood you have to create. It's a gift already given. Jesus spoke these words 2,000 years ago, but they're still true now, still being given now. My peace I give you, not will give if you do everything right, not might give if circumstances improve. Give, present tense, already yours. You're lying here maybe feeling anything but peaceful. Maybe your mind is still racing with worries. Maybe your body is tense with anxiety about tomorrow. Maybe fear is gnawing at your stomach, or your heart is troubled by things you can't control. And Jesus doesn't say those feelings are wrong, or that you shouldn't have them. He says, underneath them, deeper than them, there's my peace. It's already yours. You don't have to fight for it or work up to it. You just have to receive it. This peace doesn't require the absence of trouble to exist. It exists in spite of trouble, in the middle of trouble, because it's not based on circumstances being good, but on Jesus being present. And he is present, even when you can't feel him, even when everything seems uncertain, even when you're afraid. His peace, deep, solid, unshakable, is here. We spend so much energy trying to create peace through control. If we could just manage all the variables, eliminate all the threats, guarantee all the outcomes, then we could finally be at peace. But that's the world's peace, and it's exhausting to maintain because circumstances keep changing, new threats keep emerging, and we can never control enough to feel truly safe. Jesus offers different peace, peace that doesn't require you to have everything figured out, peace that exists in uncertainty, peace that holds you when you're afraid rather than demanding you stop being afraid, peace that says, I'm here, I'm not leaving, and that's enough. That's what makes you safe. Not the absence of danger, but the presence of the one who's stronger than any danger, who's walked through death itself and come out the other side. Tonight, peace isn't something you achieve. It's something you receive. It's already being offered. My peace I give you. You don't have to be calm to receive it. You don't have to feel peaceful to have peace. You just have to know it's yours, given freely, not dependent on how well you're handling things or how put together you feel. The peace of Christ is yours, right now, in this breath, in this moment. Let that truth settle over you now like a blanket, gentle, patient, not demanding you feel anything in particular, but just quietly present. Feel your breathing naturally slowing, your body responding to peace even before your mind fully grasps it. Notice how your muscles begin to soften when you stop trying to create safety through control and simply receive the safety that's already here. You're held in peace. Not the fragile peace of good circumstances, but the solid peace of Christ's presence. Let your whole body grow heavier, releasing into that peace, trusting that it holds even when everything else shifts. You don't have to guard it or maintain it. It's a gift, already given, already yours. Rest in it now. Jesus gave his disciples and us one commandment that summed up everything he'd been teaching, everything he'd been showing them through his life. It's the same night, the same upper room, and he's just done something shocking. He's washed their feet. Not symbolically, not as a demonstration, actually knelt down with a basin and a towel and washed the dust and dirt from their feet like a servant, like a slave, doing work that even Jewish servants weren't required to do. Peter had protested, of course. This was backwards, all wrong. Masters don't wash disciples' feet. Teachers don't serve students this way. But Jesus insisted, and one by one he washed their feet, including Judas's feet, the one who would betray him in just a few hours. He washed the feet of the man who would sell him for 30 pieces of silver, who was already planning the betrayal, even as Jesus knelt before him with the towel. When he's finished, when he's dried the last foot and put his outer garment back on, Jesus sits down and looks at them. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asks. Then he explains, "I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." But he doesn't stop there. He goes deeper, to the heart of what the foot washing was really about. "A new command I give you," he says. "Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." A new command. Not new in the sense that no one had ever talked about love before. The command to love your neighbor was already in the Torah, but new in its scope, its standard, its definition. As I have loved you. That's the new part. That's what redefines everything. Think about how Jesus has loved them. He's chosen them when they were nobody. Fishermen, tax collectors, political radicals, ordinary people with no credentials. He's been patient with their slowness to understand, their constant arguments about who's the greatest, their failures to trust him. He's just washed their feet, serving them in the most humble way imaginable. And in a few hours, he's going to die for them, for these specific men who will all abandon him, who will deny him, who will hide in fear while he suffers. Breathe slowly here, feeling what it means to be loved not for what you offer, but simply because you're you. That's the love he's commanding them to extend to each other. Not love as sentiment, not love as feeling, but love as action. Love as service. Love as showing up, staying present, washing feet, bearing with each other's failures, choosing each other over and over even when it's hard, even when it costs something. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, Jesus continues, if you love one another. Not by your correct theology, not by your impressive spiritual disciplines, Not by how well you defend the faith or how pure you keep yourselves from the world. By your love. That's the identifying mark. That's how people will know you belong to Him. For you tonight, this matters because you can't love like that in your own strength. You can't serve like Jesus served, forgive like He forgave, stay present like He stayed present, not on your own. You've probably tried. You've probably felt the frustration of wanting to love well and finding yourself impatient, judgmental, selfish, unable to sustain the kind of love Jesus is describing. And that's exactly why He says it this way, as I have loved you. It's not just a standard, it's a source. You can't give what you haven't received. You can't love others with His love until you've let yourself be loved by Him. The command to love one another isn't the starting point, it's the overflow. It's what happens when you've experienced being chosen, being served, being loved at your worst and your most ordinary and your most confused. Think about those disciples in that room. They haven't earned Jesus' love. They keep misunderstanding Him, competing with each other, failing to grasp what He's trying to teach them. One of them is about to betray Him. Another is about to deny Him 3 times. All of them are about to abandon Him in His darkest hour. And He washes their feet. He calls them friends. He loves them. That's the love He's calling us to extend. Not love that waits until people deserve it. Not love that requires people to get their act together first. But love that kneels down, that serves, that stays present even when it's costly, even when it's not appreciated, even when it seems futile. But here's the gentle truth. You can't do this perfectly. You won't do this perfectly. You'll fail at loving well more often than you succeed. And that's okay. That's expected. That's human. Jesus knows this. He's not setting you up to fail with an impossible standard. He's inviting you into something that's only possible because He's doing it through you. Because His love flows through imperfect people like a river flows through a landscape, shaping everything it touches. Tonight, you don't have to worry about whether you're loving others well enough. That's not what this moment is about. This moment is about receiving, about letting yourself be loved by Jesus, who sees all your failures and shortcomings and still kneels before you with a basin and a towel, who serves you even when you protest that you don't deserve it, who loves you not because of what you offer, but simply because He's chosen you. We can't give what we haven't received. That's not just a nice saying. It's how love actually works. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't serve from a place of depletion. You can't love others well when you haven't let yourself rest in being loved first. So tonight, lying here, letting yourself be held, this isn't selfish. This isn't avoiding the command to love. This is receiving what makes loving possible. This is letting the cup fill so there's something to pour out. The wellspring of everything is being loved first, being served first, being chosen first. Not because you deserved it or earned it, but because that's who Jesus is. That's what He does. He washes feet. He gives Himself. He loves first, completely, without waiting for us to get ourselves together. And when we've experienced that, really experienced it, let it sink in past our defenses and our shame and our conviction that we're not worthy, then love for others becomes possible. Not as another burden, another thing we're failing at, but as overflow, as the natural response to having been loved beyond what we could earn or imagine. You don't have to be perfect at loving others. You just have to keep letting yourself be loved by Jesus. Keep coming back to the basin, to the towel, to the upper room where he kneels before you and says, "Let me love you. Let me serve you. Let me show you what you're worth to me." Everything else flows from there. Let your breathing deepen now, each inhale a receiving of love, each exhale a releasing of the pressure to love perfectly on your own strength. Feel your heart rate slowing, your body releasing the tension of trying to be good enough, trying to love well enough, trying to be the person you think you should be. You're loved first. That's the starting point. That's the wellspring. Rest in that love now. Let it fill you. Let it touch the places that feel unlovable or inadequate or not enough. You're held in love that doesn't require your perfection. You're served by one who kneels before you, not because you deserve it, but because that's who he is. Let that be enough for tonight. Let yourself be the beloved before you try to be the lover. You're held. You're loved. You can rest now. Our final story tonight brings us back to where we began. Back to weariness, back to carrying too much, back to the invitation that's been extended from the beginning. We've walked through so many moments from Jesus' life and teachings, but they all circle back to this. Come to me. Rest. You don't have to earn it. You're already invited. Think about everything we've heard tonight. Jesus calling people out of trees, touching lepers, washing feet, feeding thousands, promising peace in the middle of storms. All of it has been invitation. All of it has been saying, you matter. You're seen. You're not alone. You don't have to carry this by yourself. We've heard that we're salt and light, already valuable, already essential, not because of what we achieve, but because of who we are. We've heard about God as Father, not distant judge, but loving parent who gives good gifts, who runs toward us, who delights in us. We've heard about the Good Shepherd who knows us by name, who lays down his life to protect us, who doesn't abandon us in the dark places. We've heard about provision, bread multiplying, birds being fed, flowers being clothed in glory, about foundations that hold when storms come, about vines and branches and how life flows not through striving, but through remaining, through staying connected, through letting ourselves be held. And underneath all of it, threaded through every story, has been this one truth. Transformation doesn't require your constant effort tonight. It doesn't happen through your striving or your perfection or your ability to get everything right. It happens in rest. It happens in being loved. It happens in the quiet work that God does while you simply let yourself be held. Feel your body now, so much heavier than when we began, sinking deeper into rest with each breath. You came to this time exhausted, carrying too much, your mind unable to turn off. And what Jesus has offered, through every story, every teaching, every moment we've walked through together, is the same thing he offered that crowd on the hillside. Come, rest. You're weary and burdened, and that's exactly what qualifies you for this invitation. Your tiredness isn't a moral failing. It's a doorway to grace. Tonight, you don't have to transform yourself. You don't have to fix what's broken or figure out what's confusing. You don't have to earn the right to rest or prove you deserve peace. Jesus is saying what he's always said. Come as you are. Bring your weariness. Bring your questions. Bring your doubts and fears and shame. Bring the parts of yourself you think disqualify you. Bring all of it and simply rest. Because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. Because he doesn't give stones when you ask for bread. Because he's the good shepherd who keeps watch while you sleep. Because the Sabbath was made for you, not you for the Sabbath. Because his peace doesn't require good circumstances. It requires only His presence, and His presence is here. You are not forgotten tonight. You are not asked to carry what you were never meant to hold. You are not expected to be more than human, to have it all together, to transform yourself through sheer willpower before you're allowed to rest. You're invited exactly as you are, tired, imperfect, struggling, human. The invitation has never required you to be anything other than what you are right now. And here's what's true whether you feel it or not. You are held. You have been held through every moment of this day, through every struggle and every small grace. You will be held through the night while you sleep. You will be held tomorrow when you wake, not starting from zero, not having to earn God's love all over again, but waking as His beloved child, as salt and light, as a sheep the shepherd knows by name. Whatever you're carrying that feels too heavy, the expectations, the disappointments, the uncertainty, the fear that you're not enough, you can set it down. Not forever, perhaps, not solved or fixed or disappeared, but for tonight, you can set it down and let someone else hold it. You can trust that the world will keep turning without your constant vigilance. You can sleep, and that's not irresponsible or lazy or giving up. It's wisdom. It's trust. It's the kind of faith that says, I'm held whether I'm awake or asleep. I can rest now. The teachings of Jesus weren't meant to add to your burden. They were meant to lift it, to show you that you're loved before you achieve, accepted before you perform, held before you prove anything, to invite you into rest that's so much deeper than sleep. Rest for your soul, the kind that comes from knowing you're not alone. You're not forgotten. You're not carrying this by yourself. Let your whole body be completely heavy now, every muscle releasing its last bit of tension, your breath so slow and deep it's barely noticeable, like the tide going out, everything settling into stillness. You've done enough today. You've carried enough. You can let go now. The one who holds the world is holding you. The Good Shepherd is keeping watch. The light of the world is here in the darkness. You're safe. You're loved. You can rest. You are not forgotten. Even if nothing has changed on the outside, even if tomorrow looks as uncertain as today, even if the problems are still there, even if you still feel inadequate and overwhelmed, you are held. That's not dependent on circumstances improving or you getting your act together. You are held right now, in this moment, exactly as you are. May your sleep be deep and unhurried tonight, your body taking the rest it's been needing. Your mind finally quiet, released from its constant planning and worrying. May you wake tomorrow, not with the pressure to have transformed overnight, but with the quiet knowledge that you are loved, that you don't have to earn anything before breakfast, that God's mercies are new every morning, and His love doesn't require you to start from scratch. May you know in your bones that you are His child, His beloved, already salt and light, already valuable, already enough. May you walk tomorrow held by the Good Shepherd, guided by the light of the world, nourished by the bread of life. And may you remember that rest isn't weakness, it's trust. If this time helped you breathe a little easier, you're always welcome back whenever you need a quiet place to remember whose you are. Sleep well, beloved child of God. Rest now. You are held. Good night.